イエスサー、ハブサムファン&ゲットイットダン。
Welcome back, everyone, to the interview series. We're taking it a little slow. We're taking it easy. We're a little bit in the decompression phase, and I am most appreciative of that. Here I have with me, in her studio, Miss Stacey Lizette. We haven't had much time to really get into her art, which I'm looking forward to this conversation and where it can lead. We were doing a little bit of testing with audio, and you were sharing a bit about just the inspiration behind this art, this painting series behind the camera right now. You can't see it, but I'll take a photo of it and I'll be creative in some way. But if there's anything more that you'd like to say about that, in terms of your own exploration of the symbolism within the birds and how you connect with them, and then also the different phasal shifts of the moon. In relation to our own experience. I know that's a loaded question and maybe directing it a little bit, but you can play with it.
Yes. So what we're referencing here is a series that I call Moon Minis, and I wanted to do these small little bird portraits with a bird, and they're all birds that I've taken photos of, by the way. So I saw this bird in real life. And some version of a moon, and I wanted to really just have a chance to play first of all, because when you get into bigger canvases, sometimes it can feel very serious very quickly, right? There's this big canvas and I got all these commitments that I have to make, but something that's 5x7, 6x8, I can experiment and be loose about it.
It takes the edge off a little bit.
Yeah. And it just so happened. I didn't really plan it this way to start, but it just so happened I picked out 13 different bird photographs. And so that turned into 13 moons. Which...
Right, yes, this is a needed conversation about the return to a natural calendar. But we can certainly save that for later or another time altogether, but we're in agreement, and that's one step closer to really changing this Gregorian mess.
And I really love nerding out on bird. What's their behavior? Where do they live? What are their patterns? What does the world know them as? In other words, what meaning has humanity assigned to this bird or this bird species, and why? Like, cardinals have a big meaning for a lot of people, but so I research. And
so just in this moment, here's a hot question for you, right on the spot here. What bird right now connects most with you?
So I would say favorite, although that's not true. There's not just one. Goldfinches are up there for me. Because of the sound that they make.
And where you typically go for hikes and things, do you come across a lot of golden finches?
You will see them. They're pretty common. We now have a bird feeder in our front yard, so we have a lot of them now. We didn't used to, but I heard them before I understood what they were, and so now we've attracted them to the yard, which is great because I get to see them all the time.
That's really sweet. They just have really pleasant songs.
Yes, and all the birds have different types of songs and different kinds of calls, and what are they saying, right? But there's this one little phrase, that I'll call it a phrase, that these birds make that just sounds so like inquisitive and sweet at the same time.
So you get a little bit of a taste of the social life of the finch, and even how they're maybe wanting to interact with you.
They're interacting with somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I'm speaking broadly in this sense, but I think a lot of people really want to identify in different ways with the real power birds, and like the ones that really have a lasting impression and symbolism, you know, of like these more like warrior-esque attributes, and of course even behind you with the owl. And you know, it's so interesting again, like from more of a like pagan European perspective, like the owl has a very different interpretation and relationship with the psyche than how it often is presented in Native American traditions. And that's always been a fun phenomenon for me to witness, that type of like superstition.
Yeah. Is it a good omen or is it a bad omen? Right, depending on what culture you're.
Yeah, gosh. And again, like what like that's always where I've come at it from, is like every time that I interact with owls, or you know, all my travels, I come across a lot of like roadkill owls, and so I'll either bury them or I'll harvest their wings, and I harvest their claws, and you know, pick all their feathers. And you know, there's such a, for me there's such a like a profound symbolism with owls that I don't take it as like there's never been a time where I've seen it as a bad omen, but also that something unseen within the circumstance of what has been like ordinary in my life is being called to attention, or called for challenge or something. And like almost always is there some critical point. Anyway, I could go on and on about birds. It sounds like maybe that's where an underlying shared
Yes.
shared value is.
Absolutely. And I would say every bird that I paint from a photograph, because like I said, I was there in the moment. I also go back and contemplate, like, where was I in that moment? What was I thinking? What was happening in my life? What is this painting? Right? Why am I painting this bird? What does this mean to me, even though nobody else will ever know?
Not with that attitude, at least. Yeah, because I mean, I'm just looking at this one here. I always am back and forth between crow and raven. I'm thinking that's a crow.
It's a raven.
See, I'm getting more familiar with them, and of course, especially when we go out further towards Arizona and New Mexico, and just how much they have a presence. And again, like they have a different intelligence that, in my opinion, we can learn a lot from them. But with this painting, did you find a raven like this?
I did. So there's a family of ravens in the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. There's a place that we like to go, and it's off the grid, and this family of ravens lives there, and I'm just fascinated as, you know, a central Austinite, you know, resident for my whole life. There's beach and desert and ravens all in one place, like blowing my mind, right? So that photograph is actually a compilation of a few photographs that I took from the same spot. And then I created the composition to bring all the elements together, including the moon. And I called it the moon because it's also inspired by the moon tarot card.
I can feel that.
So
yeah,
the
I can see
pathway,
that. Especially, like, of course, with the symbolism and the imagery of what even the raven represents within our psyche. And I can't help but feel, looking into that raven, of course, like that. For me, I find peace in it. But of course, I think a lot of that time, especially with the blackbird, or how even people, something within their nervous system is reactive and triggered by maybe the telekinetic. I don't want to get into like woo woo, but I really do believe that there's a substance with the connection with these different birds. And of course, like, in my opinion, we have to challenge ourselves to look at language from different angles. You know,
and they're big, right? So I think also humans are like, whoa, right? There's this big creature that can fly.
And gorgeous too.
Yeah, and they do make so many different interesting sounds.
They're I would say they're my most favorite common bird. That is like they're so meaty and they're so hardy that they're not afraid of being curious.
Right.
Whereas with owls, of course, I'd be curious. Even the story behind this owl behind you is a barn owl.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I'm assuming you were able to take photos of that from different places.
I did take this photo. This was at a rescue. So I wasn't lucky enough to be like, there's a barn owl in the wild, in the woods. I would love that. But, that's hard to do.
Oh, yeah. They're hard to come by. No
Yes.
doubt about it.
Yes.
But that's pretty special that you had the opportunity to really connect with one. And was it I guess like more domesticated and a little bit more interactive?
Well, I don't know if it was domesticated. It was a rescue, right? So that it was living in a curated space because it, needed help, and along with some other birds of prey. And this one, I decided to model it after the Hermit tarot card.
So maybe I'm picking up on a little bit of a theme here.
Yeah.
Are you intending on creating your own sort of series of oracle cards?
I do get asked that from time to time, and my answer is like, if it happens, it happens. That's a lot of cards.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be forced. Like, I'm going to do a deck of cards, right? And then have to, like, mentally make this all happen.
Yeah. And, just build that huge wall that's hard to get over. And it's like, trust me, I know that very deeply. It's even part of this interview series. And the value of it, of course, is just, like, really letting the joy of it lead the way. And if it feels like I'm sort of getting into that, job mode or that really sort of like, like slave drive in myself, then it's like, okay, all right, buddy, just take it easy. Like what are we doing here? Anyway, I feel like that's certainly the conversation that we're having, but I do think that's a bigger conversation within the art world altogether. And just like the general landscape of society and culture. But we don't have to get into that. We do not have to get. We're here to get into your story a little bit, huh?
Start the shallow end of the pool.
That's not what this is. Anyway, well, maybe we'll take a little sight of all this, and it seems like you're definitely pulling a lot of inspiration from out west a bit. Is this from a trip that you took?
This is Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. So if you're not familiar, it's where Georgia O'Keeffe.
I am not familiar with any of that.
Okay.
Pretty ignorant.
She is a fascinating artist. She's worthy of studying for sure.
Georgia O'Keeffe.
Georgia O'Keeffe.
Okay.
It is definitely a special place. You know it when you arrive. And photos that I took there.
I can only imagine. I can kind of breathe the air in that photo, And all the different plays with lighting and just how it changes so much. And of course, like, there's a lot to say about New Mexico, but it's really a very potent space. There's just a lot. There's a lot of. I feel like the land speaks a lot.
Well, you know what the state motto? I think it's the state motto.
What is it?
Land of enchantment.
Yes. From the light to the dark. But we'll keep it light. It's a very beautiful. And how about this one?
That one is a canvas reproduction of a Carolina wren. And I had a series called Wren Prayer. Because wrens, if you don't know wrens, or even if you do, right, they're very small. They're very loud. And what I was trying to convey with that series is the juxtaposition of small little powerful body against this just infinite universal space, right?
Yeah, I think even with that like context and a little bit of that background, it makes a lot of sense. What's at least how I'm interpreting these different brush strokes, and of course, I just can't help but call attention to all the details in the little branch. It's very beautiful. Well, there's so much. There's so much here. I want to take photos, and of course, even get close to it because you share a lot of texture in these works. But maybe we'll shift a little bit.
Okay.
You shared that you're from Austin, so born and raised here.
Born in San Marcos, which is, just down the road, but moved here when I was 2, so I consider that born and raised here.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's even San Marcos. I'm not familiar with a lot down here.
It's just down I-35.
Gotcha.
45 minutes.
But Austin's been home. So, how would you summarize the story of your life up to this point, as seen through the lens of your art?
Well, through the lens of my art. So let's just say my art for a second and unpack that.
Great. I'll just say these questions are like Rorschach, so there's no way of interpreting them wrong. Just say that.
Yeah, got it. Cool. I think my creativity has taken many forms. So, yes, I'm painting, but I started out really, I'm not going to go back to when I was 5, but I did take photography in high school, right? So that was kind of my first, serious study of a medium. And that stuck with me, still has stuck with me, right? Photography. So even as I'm in a space, when I'm framing what I'm looking at, I'm framing it from a photographer perspective, not from a painting perspective. That's a whole other story.
So photography is really the foundation.
Photography has been the foundation.
And then so after you got into photography, how long was it until you started to really get into painting and exploring that?
I think off and on, I've dabbled, right? I've done oil painting classes and watercolor and mixed media. Oh, we're gonna go, the weekend or, take a class with somebody and experience this take, on some technique. So when you asked me the story of my life through the lens of my art, one of the first things I thought when I read the question several weeks ago was, outside of the photography, maybe my canvas art has been other people's work, right? Because it's been taking other people's classes, trying other people's techniques, doing other people's instruction. But now, it's not that anymore.
So you've been able to sort of distinguish your own style, you feel?
I think that's where I am, is figuring that out.
Because for me, it's just, the idea of taking on landscapes from the direction that I've gone with my art. It's very hard. It's very intimidating. It's hard to even conceptualize how I would personally approach it.
What's funny though? After painting so many birds, when I painted my first landscape, I was like, "Ew, this is great," because I didn't have the responsibility of, I want this bird to look like this species of bird, and I'm not taking it into a fantasy direction, right? This is the species, and I wanted to honor that. And when I paint that eyeball on the canvas, it's like, okay, right?
Yeah.
Different.
There's that type of fatalistic precision that is tied to the joy of a perfectionist mind, and sort of wanting to aim for that ideal. And of course, it's always a little bit off the mark, but like it translates because the focus has been there.
Right. I don't want it to be unrecognizable. Like when you see it, is that a female cardinal? Well, yes, it is. Because I painted the colors and the shapes of a female cardinal, or whatever it is.
I'm really mesmerized by the hummingbird. It catches me, and it just the green with it. It just really is. I think you captured the spirit of the hummingbird in a good light. And of course, it's really hard for me to even, again, just wanting to give you from my perspective, some credit because it's very intimidating, the thought of being able to paint a raven such as that, and of course, just it's a very different direction, and of course, I think it kind of even plays into just the general demeanor of the conversation, and just being able to approach things more from that formula, and that sort of like just general, you're wanting to see things through the lens of like physical reality, and of course like tie in more of these like imagery and these deeper, almost like subliminal qualities that if otherwise for a lot of people they wouldn't necessarily have exposure to such subliminal contemplations,
right?
Because it's one thing, of course, we can go into that of like all of the psychedelia that's been extrapolated from the tarot, and like for people that are already in that realm, then it's always so present, but for other people that are really interested in like nature and just from a more mundane perspective, if they hear your story or understand what's your driving motive behind the imagery, that they might start to consider other ways of approaching their own spirituality. Is this very long-winded as a reflection point?
No, I like what you're saying, and I don't know if it's on my website or not, but there's a quote by Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, and I may get it not exactly right, but it's something along the lines of, it's not what you look at, it's what you see. And I think that just sums it up.
Yeah. Throwback to Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson as well. I feel like he's a prophet of our times. If you haven't connected with his writing, I can't help but feel any naturalist within America, if they haven't already, I think they'd really resonate with that perspective. And I think that undercurrent sort of American spirit that is maybe calling for a revitalization, just as a suggestion.
Just putting it out there.
Beautiful. So is there any more that you'd like to add about your life story?
Well, I think my life story is pretty standard, for lack of a better word. Like, I went to school. I did all the things I was supposed to do, right? I went to school. I got good grades. I went to college. Got a degree. Got a job. I worked my way through college. I worked since high school, right? And got a stable government job, many of them actually. And I've done all the responsible things.
Yeah, this is a huge conversation just in this direction, of course, and one might say there's a bit of a generational gap regarding like that access to that sort of mentality, and I'll keep it as simple as possible, but it's always curious for me looking in from the outside in those ways of what is the genuine perspective of people that are that are moving through life through these sort of like institutional structures, and simultaneously that they are able to like access a sense of freedom, and maybe there's more of a sense of stability within their family unit, and they have a sense of community, and like a lot of the other pressing issues that are very relevant within the socio-cultural conversation of America. They're not necessarily pressing against any of those pressure points within your own life.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there was a question in there, but I'll bring it to a question.
Okay.
Yeah, in light of all that said, what is your, and you can be as professional as is required, because of course, like, you work for the county, and I guess there's like a sort of a judicious discernment with what's said, and how it might be perceived or presented.
I can't wait for this question.
Anyway, yeah, building it up. Yeah. So yeah, in light of all of that, like, what is your perspective of like how societal operations are, how they're maintaining themselves from within your space and what you witness? Does it seem as if it's trending towards a more like hopeful change and a more hopeful outlook, and that there's different types of things moving in those spaces, or does it still seem as if it's kind of stuck in the back, a little bit in the past?
I think all of those things are true. Meaning, things are definitely changing and will change in ways that I can't even begin to conceive, I'm sure. And there's going to be people that don't want that at all. and don't, right? And are clinging to, this is what should be, and this is how it should be, and that's very human. I was just talking about, I made all the responsible choices, right? I did all the things I was supposed to do. But that's also how I was wired. I could have been somebody that was like, screw all that noise, I'm going to backpack my way through life, right? And I'm just going to do something completely different despite all the expectations around me. That's just not who I am or was. So it's both, I think.
Is there ever a part of you that really wants to have a taste of that?
Oh, I love to travel. So here's a story I'll share. It's been several years. 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, several years. I went to Thailand, and it was the right time for me to do it, and the pull was there, and I went. And I was there for a month. I went by myself. I didn't have any plans other than the first few nights of where I was going to stay. And I moved every 3 nights. I moved around. And it was great, because there was nobody with me. I had zero expectations of what I needed to do that day, how fast I needed to walk down the sidewalk, where I was going to eat, nothing. But what I was faced with was my own over-analytical brain, where there was one day that I was scheduled to leave. I think I even had a flight out the next day to go to an island, right? I was going somewhere else. But I didn't know where I was going to go once I got there. And I was like, on my computer, trying to figure out, where am I going to stay? Where's the best place to stay? Finally, I was like, forget it. I'm just going to get to this island. I'm going to stay at this one place, and then I'll figure it out from there. And I did that. But that wasn't it, right? So then I get there, and then it's all over again. Now what am I going to do?
Yes.
Right? Now
yes.
what am I going to do? And I figured out, this is the place I want to stay. This other island, I'm going to take the ferry, and I'm going to go stay at this hotel. Next day, get on the ferry, I go, and I get dropped off on this island, and I'm thinking the hotel's going to come, the little shuttle, and come get me, and everybody leaves, and it's just a little ferry drop off. There's like not really any infrastructure there, right? And I'm like, well, okay. So I called the hotel, and they were like, oh, we came, and I realized I had called the wrong hotel. So the hotel I wanted to go to was not the hotel that came to get me, so that's why I missed the pickup. And at that point, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just gonna sit here. So I had my suitcase, a little wheelie suitcase, and I sat on this bench. And like one taxi driver came over and like, can I take you somewhere? I'm like, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm just gonna sit here. I think I sat there for like an hour and did nothing. And it was amazing. Because I was like, here I am on the other side of the world. I'm safe. I have my bags here, and I got nowhere to go. And it's all good. It's all fine.
It's so bizarre to me how so few people actually have those epiphanies. Because of even for yourself, you're catching it in those different ways of like the ever-present need to strategize the idea of fluidity, and like that's what drives me up the wall with a lot of things that go on. It's just like it's just so close. It's just so close. Like for example, I've been having this conversation with a 25-year-old man that's he's really trying to explore different approaches to spirituality and philosophy, and like he's wanting to turn in towards that direction. And then simultaneously we're having conversations about how he has the next 12 years sort of arranged in his mind of the things that he's going to do. And at least for myself and from where I come from, and maybe I'm more of a fated to be like a clown for this society, but like I just can't help but laugh at myself when I really get really animated about where things are definitely going and how it's all confirmed that this is definitely the direction. So it sounds like you got a little taste of that from that in different ways than maybe you've experienced before.
Oh, 100%. It couldn't have happened without that space of no one else driving the schedule but me. Really, it was all up to me.
So what did you do? Sat there for an hour, and then what?
I decided, you know what, I picked this place I wanted to go. So they don't know that I want to go there. Let me just go there. And so I had the taxi driver drove me across the island to a place where I had no reservations. I just walked up into the front desk and was like, can I get a room? And they had a room. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, even that just nice and easy.
It was easy.
Did you feel like you were having a little bit of an anxiety wrestling match going on?
Leading up to that, yes. I was like, God, like I'm wasting my time trying to figure this out. I'm wasting valuable Thailand time, right? I'm here, and I'm on my computer looking up, reviews of hotels.
That's just so American of you.
It is. Well.
Yeah, or we could say European, but anyway, I'm just being playful with you. It's just it's always so. It seems like that really made an impression on you.
Oh,
do you feel
100%.
like that really you took that with you from that moment?
Yes. So a couple of things happened after that. I'll talk about my Buddhist monk experiences, but when I got back home, one of my other realizations was not anxiety, because I don't really have anxiety in the way that some people might, like from a clinical perspective, but that undercurrent of anxiety and dissatisfaction, I felt it come back. And what I realized was it was because of the expectations. Right? I gotta be a certain place at a certain time, and like all of this like structure that I was suddenly having to be back in.
And you had no one else there to sort of project that frustration on.
Well, it was almost like you went from a space of being in total control, right? I mean, as much as control as we have, right? But like of yourself and where the space you're going to be in and what choices you're making to now, oh, you're back to your schedule. Right? You got this thing, they're expecting you to show up at this time, and then these people expect you to show up at this time, and then you gotta do this, and you gotta do gotta. Right?
Oh, I can't, call me autistic, but I just can't handle it. It's not within my operational system.
Right. So to reconcile that, I actually just told my coworkers this recently. I said, look, there's never going to be another moment like this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to enjoy it. And I am going to tell myself and ask myself, would you rather be anywhere else, doing anything else right now in this moment? And the answer's got to be no.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, this is it. This is what I want to be doing because this is where I am.
I 100% agree with that as the ideal. And then there's also that caveat with the devil in the details surrounding, I think, how a lot of people even approach like mantras. And there's almost like this obscuring of the truth regarding, is this something that we're sort of like, it's like, the imagery that always comes to my mind is, like a policeman wrestling someone to the ground and like screaming at them, like, stop resisting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, sure. And I'm saying, I understand I'm speaking from a very ideal space where I'm in a safe, non-life threatening, I still have choices.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being physically controlled or...
I guess from that imagery, I'm more speaking from the internal relationship. And like, again, it's a very exaggerated analogy, but even like those moments when there's a sense of undercurrent anxiety, or maybe something analogous to like the inner child is having a moment, you know what I mean? And like, instead of being able to like address that or confront that in a way that maybe more leaning towards compassion, or like more of a salve for something that's a little inflamed, that maybe some people will sort of like bypass that emotional moment, to be in a state of mind, that's separated from like where the body in that type of thing.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. And of course, like, I'm going to extremes, and it sounds like we've walked very different walks through life to get to this moment, and it's always curious to me like how other people that consider those themes or see that imagery within their own sense of self. It doesn't. Yeah, you definitely don't come off as a like a forceful woman in those ways, or like that there's you're really like wrestling a large demon. You know what I mean? It hasn't. Anyway, I could go on and on about those things, but I'll keep it simple.
Well, it's interesting what you say though about like the physicality of emotions. If I don't know if that's even what you were saying, but that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
So going back to my art through my life, photography, yes, but also dance. So I was drawn to Middle Eastern belly dance early on.
Nice.
I've always been very shy, and so this for me was like opposites attract kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And
that's definitely a more sensual, maybe one could say erotic practice.
and also very, I mean, it's a performance art,
Mm-hmm.
So introverts and performance arts, for some odd reason tend to go together. Like there's a lot of introverts that are attracted to it, but I've gone through lots and lots of very rigorous training. And my dance mentor, Suhaila Salampour, Suhaila, hi. Let me just say this. So the belly dance world can be rife with inauthenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she really wants dancers to be artists, which means being authentic to yourself, being authentic to the music, the culture the music came from, the composer's intent of the music. There's a lot of responsibility, especially as a Westerner taking on a non-Western
tradition.
Right. A lot of responsibility. So but on that journey and in that path, where was I going with this?
Nope.
It's the physical fine-tuning, the physical awareness, not just can I execute this movement, but when I listen to this song, what am I feeling? And why am I choosing to move in this way to this sound? And being put in very, for me, uncomfortable dance exercises to tap into that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, mind is so strong, right? And calm down and think it through, right? I can execute physically, but am I do I understand what it feels like in my body to be joyous and to be angry and to be any number of variations of emotions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few different things come up, definitely. Are you going to have any performances soon?
Nothing is on the calendar right now.
That'd be cool to check that out sometime. You have to keep us in the loop.
Yeah, I'm still in it.
I am certainly very far away from, belly dancing and all of these things, but it's always just a curiosity, and of course it's not often that I have the opportunity to, explore the mind of someone that's been inside of that. And the things that you're sharing with me, it's that critical point that I think happens in life at different phases, and of where the intention lines up with the action, and that there isn't any questioning regarding why things are moving in these ways, that there's a total alignment.
Mm-hmm.
But of course it's similar to, even I feel like it's sort of an extraction of what you were even sharing about your progression to your own style through landscape, you took on tradition from other places and found the relevancy in adhering to those ways.
Mm-hmm.
But then of course again it's a sour point that I think is really, it gives so much more space for the opening of a cultural conversation that needs to happen regarding again as Americans. And the beauty of America is there's so much exposure to so many different ways, but it's so separated from those lineages.
Right.
And simultaneously we are we're indigenous to this land, despite the complexity of where our blood has come from, and that's just a whole other conversation.
Right.
But I think there it seems to be the case that oftentimes there comes that threshold, or maybe that that fork in the road of continuing to adhere to true traditions according to that framework, or just sort of taking that style and wanting to be a little bit more interpretive as is fitting for the times that we're moving through, according to like, the environment that we're navigating. I don't know how that hits for you. That may be heretical to some people.
I guess it depends on what you're applying it to specifically.
How about belly dancing?
Okay. Well, speaking again from a Westerner that has chosen and loves, and I mean loves, like I love Metallica. I love Arabic music, like the traditional classical. There's a whole golden era of music, orchestrated Arabic music, and there are dancers in Texas. Hi, Karen, that are dedicated, and I mean dedicated, to educating themselves and helping other dancers become educated on the nuances of the music that we're representing. However, where things get interesting from a artistic interpretation perspective is, am I mimicking the movements, let's say, of an Egyptian dancer because they are Egyptian, and then that makes me feel safe? And that could work, right? But at a certain point, you're a canned version of somebody else's embodiment. So yes, there's so many dancers and so many great dancers that have pushed the envelope. There's, just like music, right? There's all kinds of genres and subgenres of flavors, right? And styles. They're out there. And of course, some people are like, oh, that's not belly dancing, that's belly dancing. Come on, right?
So, yeah. So you can you've been in the game long enough that there's a maybe an intuitive quality, not from a judgmental place, but you can sense based off of how a person is moving and their body language when it's really coming from that place within themselves versus maybe that they're maybe directing themselves to that whole thing, that they're still in the school of integration of what would otherwise maybe be interpretation of cultural appropriation.
Right. And it's complex in addition, because this is an art form that can be very improvisational, solo improvisational. So that to me is like, if I was a jazz musician, and I'm not, but where do you start out playing an instrument, right? You start out learning the notes, you start out learning other people's songs, you start out doing that, and then you've mastered all these techniques and you understand, then you're curating, then you're improvising, then you're right?
Bringing it back to, you mentioned Buddhism and just, I don't know how familiar you are with the 9 bowls as a contemplation, but the 9 bowls is in essence, through everybody's walks of life, they can see this in their own ways, but essentially being able to identify, that the bull, the untamed and wild and unpredictable quality of ourselves, and being able, in that discipline and in that devotion of sort of stalking it, and then being able to capture it, and then being able to domesticate it for plowing the fields, and you build a relationship with the bull, and then the bull is free of the shackles, but it chooses to align with that lifestyle because it sees the mutual benefit of it.
Okay.
And I feel again, this is these, I argue that, we're all seeking expression because we're wanting to really understand our animal nature from a different angle, that is more from a place of empowerment versus suppression, and sort of misguided desire. That's just very broad and abstract.
Well, sometimes that misguided and I don't even know if I want to use the word misguided because I already feel judgmental for saying that. But
we need more judgment. Yeah, we need more judgment.
But how, when you're in a performance art, I think it's an interesting thing to consider your motivation. Are you stepping on stage because you want the applause, you need the applause?
Mm-hmm.
Are you stepping on stage because you really have something to share, and that even if the story that you're conveying through your movement only you know, there's still going to be a connection, right, with the
Mm-hmm.
audience? Like, so why are you stepping on the stage?
Yes. And I feel like it kind of brings it back to at some point that we're dancing around regarding presence of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And like, again, like in a lot of ways we could say through our artistic expressions that it's all placebo. It's like by merit of how much we're really engaging with that vulnerable expression of ourselves, that's what's being received by anyone that's in the audience or is observing, you know. And that at least from my art and at least like what I believe is going on, and maybe I'm delusional, but I don't think so,
Mm-hmm.
is by merit of the fact that my art is for me and my process of just being able to access that point in the moment, and as a means of, again, just like giving a lot of space and time for all of these other things that are outside of my control to come into like their own organized arrangements, you know. And like again, like I could go on and on in many different directions, but it becomes a lot more in my walk, like very much more complexified when there's a desire to be maybe collaborating or connecting with other people that also are wanting to explore their own sort of spontaneous movements, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so like oftentimes like there's that really interesting duality with like pragmatism and like strict hard lines around time, and then like the obscure sort of like nebulonic elements where people are always in a state of flow, but like then it's like you know what I'm saying, it almost is very hard to be able to like naturally and organically realign without there being some effort being put into that. And I feel like I'm kind of pulling this conversation way off point. So I guess if I'm gonna really do some mental gymnastics and make that relevant, you know, maybe that's part of the sort of, I guess the point that maybe is tied to is like sort of the compartmentalization of dance itself within our society, and like where it is and isn't appropriate to be moving in certain, especially because of the way that it's interpreted by other people, or like even if then people that are, again, like I'm making a lot of like judgment calls with like these statements, and you paint in broad strokes, you miss the fine lines. But like if a person is exposed to something like that, and that there's maybe some qualities of their own sort of like insecurities, you know what I mean, and like that then they're assuming that anyone is doing anything that they're doing for the sake of getting attention for that thing, you know.
Oh yeah, the whole yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so then this piece here, this woodpecker, have we talked about this?
Right here?
Yes.
Not yet.
It's called Reflections of Self. And I painted that with that idea in mind of when you notice something in someone else that you like or that you don't like, or something just like, that person bothers me. Like, I can't stand it when they do that. Blah. Like, what is that about? It's not about them.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's a really there's a lot of space to explore in that theme, and like calling a spade does not make oneself a spade at times.
Well, true. But you have to ask yourself why something bothers you.
100%. And I think this is where the limits of philosophy lead to, because it's so contextual, and that it would have to go then into like sharing stories, because like, you know, we're definitely in this space of agreement regarding like, if there's a genuine desire to build a relationship with another person, then there's an awareness of like that there's risk involved of becoming committed, or in the spirit of collaboration, like that there's something, there is that part of us, you know, maybe a sacrificial quality or something, where like we have to be allowing for things to sort of chip off and sort of be able to be like, as like a sacrificial gesture of like this energy is wanting to be transformed according to the other way's style, you know, but like you know, then again it's like infinitely entangled with like all of these other qualities of like generational trauma, because like people have really lost in my opinion, this is a very strong opinion, but I feel like people have really lost connection with what like communal love is, and like what love really means outside of like this really dense gravitational desperation that's claiming to be marriage for a lot of people, you know. And then we could like go into like the statistics of like why there's so much there's so much of divorces, or like there's just so much like infidelity, you know, that it's almost become like normalized, and I think it's even with this type of theme, you know, regarding but I speak, you know, most of everything that I'm speaking from is more through the color of like collaboration, and like the genuine desire and the curiosity for people to really want to be navigating like the integration of lifestyles, and becoming more in the curiosity of like, where do we start to live together in different ways, and start to address maybe some of the like the pressure points that, you know, like haven't been necessarily overwhelming in the past up to this point, but now they're becoming a little bit pressurized.
Pressurized, and I think since the pandemic, at least for me, so I'm assuming for other people as well, that your idea of safety is like blown out of the water, right? Like things are so fragile, right? I mean, if you're electricity, okay, no more electricity, what are you gonna do? No more water coming in, what are you gonna do? Right? How many days does that last before it's the like stereotypical post-apocalyptic movie, you know, like your worst nightmare?
Right.
You know, that's a fine line, I feel like, and our whole infrastructure is not set up for community resilience, really.
Right. Yeah, well,
not in this country anyway.
Yeah, it's really come down to, again, like credit where credit's due, but it's been quite an extraordinary social experiment with divide and conquer, and sort of like the replacement of traditional communal qualities into these like dry and arid, sterile institutional aims that, you know, on paper there's these high aspirations, but like the way that those words are translated into action, that there's like, it leaves a lot left to be desired, you know. And so like, it even, that point I was making before of like that in my opinion, a lot of people have been willing to compromise on what their expectations are of life, because then they sort of get into that weird like wrestling match within themselves of like that they're being delusional, and they're you know, that sort of like that pseudo piousness around like the deep internal desire for more is like arrogant or egotistical.
Right. I follow you.
You know, so like even these words have become so diluted because like we haven't like in my, again, like, you know, as collective or in communal settings or even just with conversation, and again, like there's so many different factors that like definitely, if this conversation is to be filled with different evidence, like of course there's so many different things to talk about, but at the end of the day, I do think, you know, I think where maybe it's relevant within this conversation, you know, artist to artist, is, you know, from my personal experience, that, you know, I've been able to access a quality of life that I haven't been able to find outside of these like deeply introspective and simple but very profound moments of intimacy with myself. You know, and how much it sort of softens my ability to approach relationships, and how things are basically showing up that are outside of my control. I feel like I'm maybe turning this more into an interview of myself, but with these things being said, like how does that connect with you? I'm sorry if that seems like just kind of dropping it and putting it all on you in that way, but especially because you work, you know, how long have you been working for the county?
I mean, county, state, city, I've worked for them all. Right?
So you've been doing it for a while.
So here's a phrase that comes to mind, that how you do one thing is how you do all things. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But the idea that you planted for me about, you know, almost like, dare I want more? Or like, do I even know what my dreams were if all the fences were removed?
Right. Is
the same question that I face, or any artist face, I'm assuming, like in front of a canvas, like, dare I just swipe this bright orange stripe across here right now?
Oh yeah.
Right? So in that way, just art as a practice, regardless of the output of what comes out, right? The byproduct of it. What I want that to be for me is the internal conversation, the conversation with the universe, the aha space of, you know, it just paint the orange stripe, right? Or just like, what is your body feeling? The in tune reaction flow in the moment, being present and letting that all happen.
Yeah, that's that delicate dance.
Yes.
With
oh my gosh,
does this feel like this is going to be the release, or is this sort of a destructive quality of my own chaos?
Is my brain driving this right now because I'm frustrated because I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere?
Yeah, and trying to just like, again, it's I always use the imagery within myself of like just when I'm like wading through the mud, you know, and it's just like, this is just part of this trail, and like if I'm trying to storm through it, then it's only going to make it harder, and it's going to take longer, and I'm going to be more exhausted, I'm going to be more frustrated, I'm going to be more of a mess, and it's just like, whew. Because yeah, like we're all wanting to be gliding through the, you know, through the daffodils, and you know, like it's like the sun, and you know, those feelings, but like, you know, you're cruising along, and like it's a really peculiar thing within the mind of humans, you know, within the human condition of like we fly through those pleasant opportunities and almost take them for granted and almost like expect them to always And then as soon as the turn comes where, you know, you're going into like these more cavernous spaces and the sun is setting and the seasons are changing, then it's so easy to go into these strange, like nihilistic qualities of self, you know, and not wanting to endure. There's definitely a masochism within that quality that you know, I feel like you know to different degrees with that meticulousness with your birds at some point. And like sort of the burning the purgatory flames, you know, they hurt so good.
I'm also very I have a high ability to focus and be methodical and like determined, right? If I set a goal, I'm gonna frickin' meet that goal. So I see that showing up when I hit those muddy parts, and I recognize it now, like, oh, here we are, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going, and you're
Amen.
gonna, you know, you're gonna get through it.
So yeah, you're a lady that's living a couple different lives, huh? From belly dancer to also government official. And it feels like, at least for me, if I was to be in that position, that I would feel, at least from my perspective, a particular type of tension between the two.
I don't know that I feel tension between the two, because the day job gives my brain so many toys, right, to play with, so many problems to solve, so many things to analyze, so many digital parts to organize.
Does it ever feel like a mess? Does it feel like it's at least like well arranged within its chaos? Like there's like sort of like the systemic within the work that you're doing, like, is it sort of predictable when the issues, or is it just like always, it doesn't seem, based off of how you are, it seems like things are pretty, you know, even with how you even described it, it feels like a playful challenge. Seems like you're ahead of it.
I've been, you know, I've just been in it for so long, in the government IT space specifically, that I welcome. Oh, this is a new situation, right? Like, hey, oh, okay. For example, the team that I'm managing now, I've never managed a web team before, but I rose my hand for it, right? Because I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to know what was that like, and what was that like to work with very creative team, younger team, right? Totally different vibe.
Yeah. So just way less pressure, more of just maybe not.
I don't think it's less pressure, because what we're doing is obviously highly visible. And we are in a space without authority, because I'm getting into revealing
Oh boy.
the inner workings.
Government secrets. This is what we're all for.
But this is par of the course, right? When it comes to, in my experience, government IT, you've got centralized IT, right? And then you've got departments. And inevitably what happens is departments, centralized IT, it's almost like big government. Those guys, they take forever, right? We can't wait on them. We got to do it ourselves. So departments start doing their own thing, and there's this tension between centralized standards, right, that are there for a good reason a lot of times, and then like hey guys, you know, can we make this read like this? Can we structure the page like this? Do we really need this big picture? Do we really need this logo? Right? Nobody cares about that. That, you know what I mean? And we're more in a position of influence rather than authority.
Gotcha. So For anyone to see your real work right now, we'd go to the Travis County website.
Please don't.
Don't.
Go now.
Don't check it out.
Go now and then come back in 8 to 12 months.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So you're doing a total overhaul, huh?
And it's just like I said, it's just time. It's over 10 years old.
So how would you like place art in your life as like if you were to list priorities? Like where does that come in your life?
It's a requirement. It's a requirement, and I've asked myself that of belly dance in particular, because full-time day job, right? That never ended, and I have done a lot of things in the dance world. I owned a convention for a while, produced an annual convention, and entailed, bringing in instructors from other locations and setting up the ballroom as a theater, and like so much logistics and risk and time. And I've produced shows, and I directed a group of dancers, and I still teach classes. So I've like worn a lot of different hats and have spent like all my vacation doing dance related travel things, and I've had some amazing beautiful experiences. I wouldn't change a thing. But at a certain point during the pandemic, I was like I'm still showing up, and I did all the classes from my spare room, with the camera in the corner, because I'm like, damn it. Like,
what was the driving motive behind you with all of this?
Consistency, for people to have a something familiar, consistent, reliable, and it's physical.
But did it feel like it sort of hit a breaking point for you then?
For me, it was a rough ride, because I went from doing it at home to then going back to the studio, but I was only the one. I was in the studio, but nobody else was. So everybody was on the screen, right? And teaching dancing over a screen is not easy. And then we went hybrid. So there was some people in the room, some people on the screen, and I was having to manage both, and that was exhausting, right? And I often was like, why am I even in the belly dance world anymore? What is my relationship with this dance? Because I don't want to get on stage in a costume anymore at a certain point. Like, I'm not a princess at all. The rhinestones, I love them, but do I need to be wearing them anymore? Right? And I love teaching classes, but you guys, I've been doing this a long time. But here's where I came out of it. I go to class, and when I leave, I'm like, oh, that was so much fun. We had such a good time. Right? And the live Arabic music, I really delved into that. There's a program out of San Antonio that I participated in for a couple of years that gave me some really amazing experiences being in a live music setting, which is so rare. Ironically, speaking from the live music capital of the world.
Right.
But like
that type of
Arabic musicians.
Cultural.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just a totally different vibe, and of course, like just even the ambiance and just the whole lighting and the approach, and even just again, there's a flavor to it that I definitely believe is, and I don't want to get political. I'm not going to get political.
Yeah.
But I would argue that one of the reasons why there's such a fixation on the Middle East is that is such a cultural part of the equation that is just so not represented within American culture regarding just like, again, like I feel like I'm just sound like a broken record around like just a cultural cohesiveness where there's more of a desire to drop in and share experiences and feel what that means and really let the moment generate itself. I do think that that's qualities of, you know, maybe what we would otherwise see as like, you know, these old rooted civilizations, because like they've kind of gone through a lot of different cycles of like cultural development that they've kind of like, you know, I feel like we're very adolescent, we're still very, and of course like it's a whole other thing about like capitalism and materialism and consumerism and, you know, like I'll keep it simple for now maybe, but I can't help but wonder. I'm curious if all of that experience with your dance community, did that give rise to new like reflections or considerations of like, what does community mean to you?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's why I'm still in it. That is why I'm still in it.
Well, that's the fifth question, but we're on the second question.
Okay.
Here's the second question. This is way off par with everything that we've been talking about.
Okay.
So I'm very curious to hear how you answer. Do you feel fulfilled with your answer to the first question? We got to belly dancing. Is there more?
Oh.
Let's hear some more layers, if there are any more.
Are there more layers? Art, dance, photography, work, travel. I'm not gonna talk about family. Yeah, I think those are some good layers.
We'll keep family separate.
Yeah.
Well, just to give a little context from my perspective of through my journey, it's come to the point, you know, this has been definitely a few years, and it's a really ridiculous story, as you would expect, but I have no connection with any of my blood relatives, and of course, like from my end, the door is always open, and there's so many conversations that are on the table, but like there's no idea, there can't be any idea of being able to move forward if these different points are addressed or, you know, brought to light or are really considered. And again, it's hard for me to look through the lens of understanding how other people organize family, or like what that feels like, or does it feel like a little bit of a performance, or like, you know, maintaining a status quo, and of course, like if you want to avoid family altogether, we don't have to get into it, but I do think that that's part of at least through my opinion, you know, how we're interpreting or how we're looking at family, and, you know, through the lens of our own art, and, you know, what in the changing world that we're living in, of like, you know, what is also being adapted, and maybe what's being like left behind, or what's, you know, anyway.
Well, right. So let me just say this.
Sure, let's hear it.
I think, again, I'll go back to, you know, like, how were you wired when you were born? I think I was wired to the wiring plus circumstance, right, results in how family oriented are you to begin with, number one. And then I mean family, I mean like blood relatives, right? I wasn't really wired in that way specifically. I have family I absolutely love, you know, and connected to for sure. But, you know, I danced with a group of women for 7 years. We put on a monthly show together, and we were rehearsing together weekly, and we are all so incredibly different. And now we've known each other for like 25 years, 20 years, and they are my family. Like, when I imagine, in fact, I went for a walk this morning. We went to Town Lake, and we're walking and talking about like what happens when you're 70 and 80 years old. How do you plan for that? Where are you going to live? Who's going to take care of you?
Oh my God.
And
is that where your head goes?
Well, only because it was this morning, right? But like this idea of you guys, I want to stay connected to them, and like it would be a hoot, right? If people are like, we're just gonna take this plot of land, put a bunch of tiny houses, and we're gonna have our, our community of not a retirement community, right? But like your family of choice.
Keep going.
Residency of.
Yeah, I feel like what you're suggesting is, I think it's a really touchy dialogue for a lot of people.
Yeah, okay, tell me why.
Because there's that, it kind of goes back to the story that you're sharing about your experience in Thailand, where there's so much in my, again, like, this isn't for everybody, and at least from where I come from, and like from my walk, is I hold a lot of space for like the communal collaborative component coming together. And I think this is a lot of what I'm wanting to call attention to, with like, in my travels, I've come, in seeking the idea of community, and like, just witnessing a lot of things that are going on in different, like, containers that are wanting to be seen as sustainable, but it's not really sustainable. And there's a lot of like, even those things about trauma bonding, or like bringing the same sort of patterns. And we could even, again, like, I'm not trying to talk any trash on anybody, but I, like, even with like expats that are like in one mind claiming that they hate America, and then they go somewhere else and they have all this wealth that they've accumulated from hating America, and then they bring American culture to these places but pretend like they're enriching themselves in like a foreign experience.
Right.
And I feel that possibly there could be a lot more of a dynamic approach and a consideration if, again, like, there's a desire to arrive to that outcome, but there's also like a desire to see that like the creative pulse is like continual through life. And one could argue that that's the aging process itself. It's like when a person sort of dies to that, or they've like, oh, we're at the end of the road, then it's almost like they've committed to their own sort of like mausoleum.
Oh yeah.
In some sense.
Right. Yeah. No. I wasn't advocating for that at all.
No. I believe you, but it's like, especially like, at least what I'm wanting to extend is just a thought experiment or something to chew on within that vision of like, is there space in that vision for like other like family dynamics where there's like children involved, or even just like, single men and women that are like respectable and in their craft, and they have a vision for like, bringing things more together and doing things a little bit differently, and sort of like being in the vein of pioneering spirit, but like also without like denying ourselves access to the resources that are available, so that we can, it's not being generated from desperation, and it's more like, we're making this happen, we're taking steps towards this outcome, we're wanting to fulfill this communal vision, but like there's no gun to our backs, or like we're doing this because like we need to stand up against the man, although we do to different degrees, but at least like, am I prefacing this too much? Are you hearing what I'm saying?
I'm trying to stay connected to what I said, that you said was a touchy subject, and adding in what you're saying now to like synthesize it.
Did it feel cohesive? I feel like it was in the same thread, but sometimes I get very abstract.
So, is this about like the vision of like what is a community? And I don't want to overuse that word.
Mm-hmm.
System. What is it composed of, and how does it operate, and how do you keep innovation, vitality, support part of that system? Is that what I'm hearing?
I
The
think
question?
you're hitting it pretty close to it.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, being dynamic and again, like not falling into that trap, which I think a lot of people do, and like the idea of retirement and like wanting to sort of like have a phasal shift, but then it becomes more of like sort of a like a resort idea.
Yeah. And yes, I understand what you're saying. And one of the things that I've been contemplating more so than observing is like when people reach a certain age, again, depending on how you're wired, you either stay curious or you don't. And if you don't, do you fall into almost like your own patterns, like trapped in your own patterns, quite literally?
Yeah.
And I say this with a friend of mine that comes to mind because she is definitely the former and not the latter. Amazing woman. Her name's Jennifer. A friend of mine, another artist, and I went to Morocco several years ago. Met her, and the three of us instantly fell in love with each other. And she's in her 70s. Used to live in Austin and lived in, forgive me, Jennifer, Portland, Oregon. But her family was here. So she would come to town, even after we got back from Morocco, and we would meet up, and just have an amazing time. She recently sold her house, all her belongings, and moved to France.
Interesting.
And not because she was like, I gotta do this financially or I'm not gonna be able to make it. She's alone and has such an appreciation for beautiful art and culture, and this is just what she loved and what called to her, and she just took the leap. And I am so impressed by her. I'm so impressed by her.
Is that something that you would be interested in doing?
I don't know. We'll see what happens in my life,
Yeah, I can't help. I'd like to keep up with geopolitics, and that's of course, like I'll keep as much as I can keep that simple. And I'm always curious when I hear of Americans choosing to go to France or Britain in the context of this hyper colonization, like colonialization that's happening and has been ongoing. And I know like it's the same as with America of like, if you're going to like project the idea of what America is based off our leadership, then like you're really not seeing how Americans actually are. Like it's just. And I feel like that's a similar. I've been to France one time. Kind of got familiar with Paris a little bit. I can't say that I have much exposure to the general culture, and it's very foreign to me. But is she just sort of like doing her own thing and kind of just getting into it for herself and
got her like apartment that she's rented and
a little self-discovery journey.
That's where she lives now.
But for you, it sounds like you're more leaning towards like a communal ideal.
I think I live somewhere in between those ideas because on one hand I really love stability and I love my friends, and I love that idea of like, we can go walk around we want to, right, have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But the other half of me is like, yeah, let's just ditch everything. Like, oh my gosh, go spend 3 months in this place and then 3 months in this place and then just like see what happens. How long could I do that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I shared this with you. Maybe I didn't. I've been on the road for 12 years, and so I'm on the other side of that. And I can't help but feel I've always been intentional, and now it's more of like, you know, what does it look like to bring these other experiences into, you know, cohesiveness with other people, and then also like fully embrace the fact that I have like literally no idea of what's going on in these ways with people and careers, and like, you know, so it's really an interesting you know, social experience that, you know, sometimes it hits and sometimes it's a little bit I'm learning a lot is basically what I'm saying with that. But it seems like that's something that part of you is pulled towards.
Oh, yeah.
So how many more years do you have in your governmental position, would you say?
We'll see. I'm thinking maybe 2.
Wow. Retiring young, huh?
Well, I'm not that young. I'm not as young as some. Let me put it that way.
Very interesting. Well, here's the second question.
Okay.
Here we are. It only took us an hour and a half to get to that. How are you feeling with it so far?
I'm good.
Cool. Yeah, it's coming out of left field. What has been your relationship with drugs in the past into the present? And with drugs, I'm speaking of illicit or legal or prescribed, you know. I feel like mushrooms. How do you feel about mushrooms?
I've experienced that. I've experienced a lot of things. But long ago.
You got a taste, and
I had my stretches. Yeah. Not. I don't know if I could connect a thread between that and art, for me personally.
So your experiences with these altered states of consciousness weren't so much like revelational for you.
You know, I will say the last time I was under the influence of anything, I had some amazingly deep thoughts, and I really impressed myself. And I have no idea what they were. Right.
So you're just sort of going with the ramble, and like, wow.
It was all internal. I wasn't even speaking out loud. Yeah, I was probably like staring at a poster on the wall or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So that was but you lost sight of those insights, or those.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you feel like they ever just sort of like bubble up to the surface, and you're kind of having moments or memories of those types of experiences?
I think my memories are more from an outsider observing the experience rather than re-experiencing anything inside of it, if that makes sense. Like, I can't conjure myself inside this space, but I can remember.
Very interesting. You know, I would say that even in this conversation with you, and just hearing how different your experience is with it, and you're very different, at least so far, with the artists that have shown up for the interview series. And some of them are, I meet them and they're ready to just get into it the next day, and it's just a very different, you know, quality of you know, how people answer this question specifically. But you know, in that realm, you know, if we're going to then say like, you know, in the art world, and if we're going to consider you within the art world, and like, you know, that goes without saying that you're more. It seems like you're more of a like conservative mind. In some like in the art world, which is obviously already very maybe like I don't want to say because I don't want to have it like charged with any political connotations, but like you know, setting aside all the charged associations of like liberalism and conservatism, that the art world itself is very liberal. You know, it's very expressive and. But I would say in that space that you sort of like represent a more like conservative quality of that.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I don't live in a right brain space because I you know, have 8 hours of, like I said, problem solving.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like you're really in that like left-sided quality? It seems like dance, you maybe access that to different degrees, but there still is. It sounds like from what you were sharing with me, and of course, we didn't get into your natal chart. I don't know your astrology. You know what I mean? I think there's always interesting phenomenon within that of like why some people have more of a lean toward the analytical mind. You know. And sort of like the seeking of like that type of like structuring or like you know IT world type of thing. Anyway, I don't want to.
I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart, so I like meaning. I understand the meaning of things, and like I can't stand. Hi, how are you? I'm good. Oh, what did you watch last night? You know, like, right.
I cannot. I literally can't exist in that world. Yeah. Have you? I don't know if you haven't seen my van yet, have you? Out there?
I haven't.
Okay. Well, when we wrap this up, I'll show you my van. But you know, I've just gotten to that point where I believe I have a lot of patience for a lot of things in the world, but there are some things that I just am not willing. I just don't have the capacity because, like, I'm sure you hear what I'm saying, and it sounds like. You're kind of fed up with it yourself.
I think you probably have stronger opinions than I do. Meaning,
I would agree.
I really always want to see both sides of things.
Yeah, diplomacy.
I want to know. I want to know why this person sees or feels, or why this is this way. Why is this way? Because there's a reason for both.
And I feel very similar. Maybe that whole I'll backpedal a little bit. Maybe all of that expression that I just made was more of a comedic aspect because like even still like when people you know you got to read between the lines a lot of the time and like even what's you know if you're it's how the state of mind that you're going into these types of interactions and like you know a lot of people even by you know maybe initiating conversation that they're really already sort of geared to maybe take it to those depths and maybe that there's just more of a desire to find the way in and maybe we're limiting from accessing those depths because of like the idea of the standard of superficiality. How's that for a thought? I don't get too heady here either.
Yeah. Well, listen, I have a team member on my team, and he's amazing. When I ask him, how are you? He, every time, says, well, let me see. And he thinks about it.
Nice. I feel like a lot of the time, if I'm initiating conversations, I just immediately go into that already saying what was already in my mind in the first place. And almost always is that sort of is it already rolling? You know, again, like that interesting phenomenon of like oracular events within our lives together. You know what I mean? And like really leading and like trusting on that edge. You know, but of course it's really exposing. It's maybe very vulnerable. You always are at risk of being seen as insane. But
is that one of your bumper stickers? Because I think it should be.
My whole van is a bumper sticker. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's a fun one. Anyway, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. I think the trust underneath of it all is really that trust quality and really being able to orient ourselves within our own existence. And you know, there's a lot of different. I'm basically trying to summarize the second question, and it seems like you're pretty reserved within your own experience. Drugs haven't been a big quality of your life, and
like I said, I've had plenty of experience with them. But it wasn't in the pursuit of anything meaningful.
Okay. So going through the motions in a sort of a societal period of your life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You never you've never gone, you know, out on the trails with mushrooms and really. Mm-hmm. Oh. Well, there's a thought. Something to think about, maybe, or not. Anyway, it's been a while for me, but even, you know, very strangely, I hadn't done LSD for over 10 years, and I did an interview with a friend, you know, and afterwards we're just like hanging out outside of the cafe, and he's just like, you know, hypothetically, what would you say if I offered you a tab of acid? You know, and so long story short, 2 days later, we went for a little hike together, and he was, you know, we went around Town Lake, and it was very enriching, but underneath of it all, it gave me a good sort of like mile marker of recognizing, like, you know, it's similar even to what we were talking about, the music, you know, mm-hmm. like to different degrees of like, you know, these, you know, LSD at some point, and like I feel like LSD is so, just for the record, you know, like LSD is so inferior to mushrooms on so many levels, but it has a place because it gives more of a, like, anyway, I don't want to get into the whole breakdown of what that chemical is, but it was so
high def.
Yeah, yeah, right. But there isn't like a relationship inside of it. It's right. More of like these types of fractals and sort of even like the nature of the looping, and or even just like bringing more clarity to like synchronic movements and like sort of, you know, like how people come in, but anyway, the long story short of that is just like, you know, after, you know, experiencing that with my friend, I've realized that it's going to be a while before I even entertain the idea of going into that space again, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's what I have to say about it. Well, with all that said, how do you view the concept of healing? Mm-hmm. And how do you personally prioritize health in relation to creative expression?
Well, healing and health mean two different things to me entirely.
Oh. Go ahead.
Well, the words just initially imply, or maybe the phrase itself, when I hear healing, I think more from an emotional, spiritual perspective, and when I hear health, I think from a physical. Mm-hmm.
That's a good distinction.
So ask me again?
Yeah. So how do you view the concept of healing? And I feel like you kind of answered that in your own way.
Yeah.
And then how do you personally prioritize health in relation to your creative expression? So a lot of what I was wanting to point towards was more of like, you know, like the consideration of like lifestyle, or like what are those patterns that, you know, give you a sense of like stability or sustainability, you know, or like confidence, and you feel strong, and you know, like how that then like sets the stage for you to be in your creative, you know, rhythm.
Mm-hmm. A few things come to mind. Physically, water, drinking enough water, which I struggle with. And, you know, air, being outside.
Mm.
Having those two things present on a regular basis is a good, solid foundation. But I think mentally, it's putting your self-criticism aside, and it's knowing when the judge is allowed to come in.
Well said. So you at this stage in your life, you believe, or you feel as if you found a real foundation, and a real, you know, there's a real structure regarding like your relationship with your own health and healing, and like there isn't like a seeking for the healing, or there, you know, there's
I think there's always more to do, for sure. But there's it's a really nice place to be when you can not be so concerned with the outcome as a thing that is going to validate you.
To act without attachments to the fruits of the labor.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say that before. You were making a comment about about dance in your community, and and of course it's. I feel like there's a lot of peace that comes with that, and of course I think it helps with sort of framing expectation in different ways as well.
And that's another kind of dance, though. But because if you are making art, and at some level you're like, but I have this studio, but I have this show, but I know I'm gonna try to sell this maybe. At a certain point, that like critique of, you know, is this color working, is this composition working, like are the elements, and what I'm trying to convey, is it being expressed in a artful and in a
digestible way,
in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Is this crap or is this actually
right.
good?
Yeah, I think you're getting right into that's a hot take right there. The judge is in, huh? Jeez. Yeah, but very, very relevant. Of course, like this is a quality of the conversation within art altogether that I think is sort of like diametrically opposed to art in its true form versus like the capitalism quality or the economy of art.
Right.
You know? And go ahead if you had something you wanted to say about that.
Please finish your thought.
Yeah, because it's like, again, it's a very interesting phenomenon to witness of like the people that are making more of the pop presentation of art and almost like obviously sort of regurgitating forms, and like it seems like, again, there's so many things to say about just the theater of presentation, and like what's being, you know, what if these things are actually being sold at these, and like if there's actually a transference of money for these art pieces being sold, or again like the laundering, and it's just the whole thing is just so broken, and like it can appear a certain way from the outside looking in of like that the art world is vital and it's thriving, and you know there's so many opportunities, and I go to these farmers markets, or I go to these different street fairs, and all these people have all this art and they take hours to set it up, so people must be buying art, you know what I mean? But I can't help but feel, and when I've been at these different places, that like really it feels very frustrated. maybe. I don't know how. For me, I've never tried to sell on me art because it like blows up in my face. So I'm glad I don't feel that type of pressure. It's always a curiosity and it's getting there. But do you ever feel that you're sort of selling yourself in these ways?
So, so when I decided to start painting, like, hey, why don't I stop dabbling and like see what would happen if I just paint, like, do a thing and paint. I joined this program. How American of me, I know. And it was 12 weeks, and the artist, I was following him. I don't even know how I got in his newsletter, but I just love his writing style and like what he has to say. And they have this program, and it doesn't dictate your subject or your medium or your anything. But what it did ask the participants to do is define a series of work and really think about what you're going to create, like and why it was important to you, and why even making art was important to you, so that you made the time to actually do it, right? So that was kind of my doorway into why I'm even sitting in this room, right? It was because of that program. And so, like, that could have been enough, right? I could just been like, here's my series, and I did it for myself, and I'm gonna hang it up in the bathroom, and I'm done. But no, my brain told me the logical thing to do is keep the flow going. And how are you gonna keep the flow going? You gotta these things have got to go. Well, what are you gonna do with them? I mean, there's only so many paintings you can give to your friends or your family. If you're like, I hope you like it, and I'm not just giving you an awkward moment right now, right? Okay, well, I guess I'll try to sell some stuff. So there you go. With that said, yes, I have been the artist that has spent hours setting up the infrastructure for an outdoor fair and brought all my stuff, and I mean, like, it is a lot of work.
How has it shown up for you?
It's a lot of work. I looked at it as just like I look at this space. This is an opportunity for people to come in, and I can observe what they observe, and I can see what resonates with them, and how I know what was in my head when I painted that, but like, what do they see? And what's drawing people's attention, and what can I learn from that? But when you pay a fee and you've driven and set up and all, and then you're there, what's really hard about it is you don't ever really know, is this my art, the disconnect? Is it the audience in this location? Is it the economic climate? Is it the time of the year, the time of the day? There's so many variables. It's like to me, the equivalent of saying, I'm going to go to New York, or I'm going to go to California, and I'm going to be a star.
I'm going to make it.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's even the frustration of people taking in your art and being like, oh my God, you should totally go sell this at a show. Like, oh my God, like, why don't you just put yourself out there? And it's like, if you actually knew what was going on in these different ways, and it's, I feel, again, like, not wanting to be judgmental, just observing what's going on, and like, again, like, really celebrating the fact that people are becoming expressive. But in some ways, we might argue that art, to different degrees, has become diluted in what its like ideal represents, and like how it's sort of become captured by like the formulaic approach, or the 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 like the formulaic I used the word earlier, but like the regurgitation of what is working.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like it's not coming from
It's formulaic of.
and it's not coming from that, you know, a different story that arrives to that point, that it's like, I feel like, especially what has been, and I don't want to go in a monologue, but hopefully this is connecting with you, that in a weird way, in of like, you know, what I believe has been happening for a while, and I don't know when that changed or if it ever changed or what's really going on within even like, you know, the art institutions that are like, you know, sort of like gatekeeping the stories surrounding what artists have been or what they were, or who, you know, who are the successful artists, and then like where, again, like don't look into their own family history or like their own sort of access to affluence, and you know what I mean, and like there's been this weird sort of normalization of like art is however you choose to interpret it, and that there's been almost like a separation, in my opinion, of like wanting to really interface with the artist and understand like what is the actual artist's message, and then like how does that coincide with how a person is perceiving it. You know what I mean? And I believe that that's sort of like the, you know, the sixth element, so to say, or like, you know, the hidden quality that one might say is like, because of how much that's been diluted, or it's sort of been, it's lost sight, potentially a catalyst, if there's like a message that's sort of like reinforcing the idea that for example, like by supporting me as an artist, that you can be certain that all of those resources are going towards the proliferation and the continuation and, you know, leading to this vision, you know. And like even in that of like, it kind of brings more of a connection if a person's hanging that art in their house, of like there's a sort of an energetic transference of like they see this, they know that they were supportive of a world vision that's in motion, that needs the support, and that it maybe is even like generating more of a hopefulness or more of a buoyancy in their own life, because like again, I do think that's a lot of the power of art is you know, building a relationship or having the intimacy of knowing, you know, what's really not like the theatrical story of I met this Mexican man, and he, you know, and we went for a walk and he showed me a beach, and I'm not trying to talk smack, like I'm not trying to talk trash on anybody, but I feel like there's been qualities that have been forgotten, or like that. Sorry for this monologue. Yeah, how do you feel about all those ramblings?
Well, I can't speak to whether they've been forgotten or not, because I only know what I've experienced, right?
So have you found success in selling the art in those ways, or are you kind of pivoting into a different direction?
I think in person is absolutely critical. I know that there's a lot of artists that have success online and have made that work. But again, I think it's like, I'm gonna be a star, y'all, or spend a ton of money on Google and Facebook ads or something. I don't know, but I don't. So let me riff off something you said about like somebody's taking something home, and like what that does for them in their space. One of the things I hope is true is that when I'm creating something and I'm having a relationship with the canvas and the subject and the paints and the, and that is happening, I, will also do things like, maybe I'll write something before I start painting on the back of the canvas, right? That like adds another layer of energy and intent behind this piece. Or maybe I will put on a piece of music and I'll dance around my art studio at home, like to infuse as much good things that somebody might then hang in their home. And who knows if it translates and carries forward or not. I hope it does. But you're not going to know how much something resonates with you, I don't think, as well online as you're going to see something and have a reaction to it. And what are you reacting to? Is it the fact that it's a hummingbird? You love hummingbirds? Maybe that's it. That's enough. But is it because the color subconsciously like ties to your favorite blanket as a kid? I don't know. Or is it because there's like an energetic cocktail that happened?
I can't help but feel almost always it's that direction, at least from like the artists that I resonate with and like find connection. And of course, like it's like surprise no surprise that the different, just as the example of like an artist to artist type of thing, of like almost always are the people that I'm interacting with, and I kind of give them my business card and we're having that conversation. It seems like maybe they'd be interested, but it's a little bit far off, like surprise no surprise that like I never hear from them again. You know what I mean? But there's like I feel like it's we you and me share like a real common interest in nature, and find a lot of restoration in our relation. Of course, like we're approaching that from very different angles, but I guess the point that I'm really getting to is there always feels like there's always something there that if at least those questions are asked and there's more of a curiosity, anyway, I feel like I'm repeating that theme. So I'll move on. How's that sound?
Okay.
What truly moves / inspires you to be an artist? That was a sloppy ending, but I feel like we were at the same point.
Yeah.
With the energy transference, different artists, where their intentions are, and where they're are they really trying to move the conversation forward? That's at least what I'm seeking.
So, two things come to mind. One is going back to health. And what I noticed is that when I paint on a regular basis, it's like going to the gym. And then when I don't go to the gym, my body's like, I need to work out. Like it feels bad.
Like sludgy.
To not do it.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's that driver. So I said two things, but there's more than two. So here's another one.
Take your time.
Unnumbered number of things. There's the magic in, wow, like that, like combination of texture or color or pattern that just happened. Like that's the amazement that can happen in the process, and it may not be at the end, or maybe it is, because there's always a point at which I fall in love with a piece. I may not stay there, but it happens at some point for some piece, and I don't think it's because I'm brilliant, right? I think it's like, wow, like the flow, and everything came together, and then this magical thing just happened. That's like addictive. right?
I'm glad you brought that up. And I do believe, like, art is the only outcome for individuals to really integrate, like, the addictive nature. Like the difference between consumption and creation. Because there's that real recognition of, again, quality of life, of like when you're really in that zone and you're able to, again, find such joy, and like there's that quality of like just really clean ecstasy in that space where it's like it becomes so consuming, and it's like, like, why, again, it for me, certainly it makes everything else in life so much more approachable, because it's like this quality of self and this quality of experience is so easily accessible at any given moment. And again, like getting back to that whole thing around like jazz and like, really just being really clean and like exercise and like, okay, like what is the song that's wanting to be played right now with this other person, and is it going to be kind of going into maybe some sour notes, or like, how to be playful and like just be adaptive. And I think there's a real fine line between a psychopath and a real clean, authentic, and very like considered approach to things. Yes.
I will add, there's also for me personally, and maybe this is like, I don't have OCD, but maybe this is like if I went down that thread, it might lead down that direction, but I really enjoy, like, when things fit into place, meaning like, I'll give you a really personal and ridiculous example. You're the fire horse, right?
Right.
Spring cleaning, get your shit organized, and I'm like, I can do this. I know some of the areas of stuff in my life that haven't been touched in a while, right? It hasn't been investigated. So, corner of my closet got this treatment. And I touched everything, and I, reorganized it, and the final result gives me so much peace that I will go in and I will just stand and look at the corner of the closet and just go, wow, like, I love it. I love it so much. So that can happen with a piece of art too, right? Like, yes, that all came together.
Yeah.
I really,
the sanctity of order and
yeah.
well intended. I think it's even just being able to. I don't know how much you get into like feng shui or the concept of like wabi sabi. But it ties into this, everything that we're talking about, of like even being able to, for ourselves to really apply our knowledge to our own art, and just knowing that like 100% in any space this is having an influence because it's generating, it's pulsating.
My environment is so important to me in that way. Like I put a plant, getting ready, feng shui, all this, I bought a plant, cleaned up the front porch, painted the spot that needed a touch up, all of that stuff, and put that plant there. And same thing, I walk out the door now, and I turn around and I look at the vignette, and I just think, yes, so much better.
Amazing. So you're just really refreshing and moving the sort of the stagnant air. And you're finding some real sanctity in your closet right now, huh?
Around me. I'll give you another nerd example. So I walk to the gym, and I live on a pretty busy street, and then I cut through a neighborhood that leads to another busy street, and there's trash because it flows around from the bus stop trash cans, or people throw it out, or however it gets around. And my eyes lock onto that stuff like laser beams. And I spent probably the last year in this routine, like, I'm gonna go walk to the gym, and I see this stuff, and I see this stuff, and I see this stuff. So finally I bought one of those, like, grabber thingies. And I've started to go out and pick up, and I mean, there's a cigarette butt, poof, poof. Okay.
Wow. See, you're turning into one of those ladies.
And I know it's ridiculous.
I think that's great. Yeah.
But now I walk to the gym and I can look around and I go, yes, for this half a second that it doesn't have, an empty Whataburger cup or whatever.
Yeah.
It's.
So you kind of are reclaiming your power in the moments, and cleaning up your streets.
I mean, nobody's doing it, and nobody's gonna do it.
See, this is the type of government official that we really need. Stacey, for some board of whatever. You got my vote. It's just, again, it's taking pride in our environment, regardless of what we're identifying as or what we're identifying with, and just, again, like, really bringing it down to the base, the brass tacks here. Just like, let's just clean it up a little bit. Can't we just just try a little? Anyway. So.
Honestly, my hope is, like, okay, people are driving by seeing this crazy lady on the side of the road. But, like, my hope is they think, okay, well, maybe I'll think twice before I throw my cigarettes out the window, or maybe I'll.
Or give them, like, a little stink eye or something like that? Are you like on a...
No, I'm so focused
on a mission?
On, like, what I'm seeing,
Amazing. You're going to start a movement.
Great, everybody, please join me. I'll bring the trash bags.
We'll have a collaborative event.
Yeah.
Well, good to know that the streets are a little bit better after you go to the gym and when you come back.
Well, I just think it's again, it's just how I'm wired. I want to see beauty around me.
Yeah. We're on the same team. It sounds like beauty and the ideal maybe inspires you. But maybe tell me a little bit more. What truly moves you or inspires you to be an artist? And how would you define your relationship with this source of inspiration?
Sometimes being an artist, I think, is the opposite of what it would be if I wasn't. Meaning, and I've thought about this with dance a lot. If I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing with my time? Going to the movies, going to a restaurant. But what would I be doing? I should be doing this. This is fascinating for me. It's healthy for me. I hope other people can get something out of it. I do. But it's so contemplative. I'm going through what I mentioned before about that program where you're defining your series. I'm embarking on that again. And so I'm having to really ask myself the question of not why am I an artist, but the question that was posed to me is, what do I want to put into the world? Like, what is my art?
There you go. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Well,
right. What is
Stacey.
So I've got some puzzle pieces on the table. I haven't quite fit them together yet. But what I'm working with is, why am I drawn to birds? Why the landscapes? And I think what it comes down to is a bird that's on a branch, a bird that's flying, a bird in an environment. I know there's no birds with these guys, but like the spaciousness in contrast to a creature that we might overlook, right? So there's that. Are we even aware? Question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hello, did you know? Like, you're gonna walk by this, even if you don't know it's there. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
That awareness as humans operating in a world where birds are coming to the feeder in my front yard. They're living in but we're living coexisting, but they're living a totally different existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we notice that enough. So there's that. But also that part of me that wants to travel and wants to just go from place to place, and like where I might have started painting birds because I was observing them and thinking, what's the cultural meaning? What's the mythology? What's the behavior? That's one way to observe, right? But the other way is to say, but what if I am the bird?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about the fantasy of I can go and I can be in this space and be an observer of the environment from a totally different perspective.
Yeah, it's I would say that's like a quality of nutrition that a lot of people don't recognize, so to say, within our like soul. That like there's the fundamentally, and I believe a lot of the issues that we face collectively are because of like the lack of access for an individual to be embracing the our own nature as humans of like there are seasons in our life where we're wanting to be transient, we're wanting to be in the exploration, we're wanting to be open to discovery, we're wanting to be outside of it looking in and knowing that like it's not going to fall apart without our involvement, you know what I mean, and like being able to be very small in those ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then be able to return with with that sense of the cup is full, and what does that look like to be that's at least how I'm relating from my navigation, and from like I have I have a very serious relationship with birds, genuinely, and I feel like it's because of what I believe, like what I've accessed, and doing things differently, and being able to, because I think even for a lot of people, like they kind of pity animals, or they have this weird thing where they're like, oh my god, they must be so cold. How are they eating? You know what I mean? And but when you're living in that sort of realm of life, that like there's such a freedom, and there's such a movement, and there's such a like an interplay with like seasons and how they move, and like there's more, again, like in like how different that is to be living through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
That their range is limited to what they're really wanting to experience and where they're wanting to go, and how much they're just even with ravens, of like just watching that they're so strong, like they're so strong across their chest that they can just hold their wings up and just like spiral because of the wind gusts and go anyway. It's just there's a lot to say about what that maybe correlates to regarding even like the integration of bird nature and bird medicine into like our society, and like how much that for that type of dynamic to really be able to exist, like there would have to be such a framework of trust that isn't enforced, but it's just because of by the good intention of a human being that has gone through their own past and through their own process where they've secured that within themselves. Anyway, this is another rambling, another monologue, but it's interesting talking with you, and of course, like you've traveled. I'd love to hear more about where you've been, but even in that, of like that, there seems to be a theme that maybe is returning of like a curiosity of your own, like uninhibited and boundless self as Stacey, beyond the sort of what you identify as the programming and sort of the structuring.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does that feel like that's like a sort of like a critical point of like you're either gonna do it or you're not, or is that how it ever feels, of like that there's like an underlying sort of like I guess like challenge within yourself? Is that something that you really want to do? Is that something that you really are wanting to like go all in on at any
Are we
point
talking
in your
about
life?
art or actual?
Well, just going and getting out there and really letting it sort of like putting the sail up and letting the winds take you wherever it goes.
Yeah, I think it could happen. Yeah. Mhm. But as it relates to art, there's also the element of what am I capable of on canvas, and a little bit of like challenge accepted to that as well. So yeah, the puzzle pieces I have on the table about sort of the freedom, the travel, and the observation, the being in the moment, the reverence for nature, all of that. I'm trying to get it down to like what is the real core thing that if I was to paint a painting tomorrow and I wanted to just say something, what would it be saying about any of those concepts? And how would I do that?
And is that something that you feel like would be forced, or is that something that again it's like that because of the knowing and that living, that it's becoming imbibed in your work, versus like I gotta make this statement, people gotta know this?
I don't think it's going to be I gotta make this statement, because people may not even know what the statement is. But I want to be so still and sure, like yes, that's it, that then is what burst out, right, on whatever gets created from that.
Sort of the indigenous ways of the mandala, just like really being able to live in like the hollowness of being the instrument, and allow it, and like just really being able to, and that was sort of like what I was pointing towards with the healing and the health, about our own relationship with our nervous system, and like these different, like these sort of pressurized processes that, anyway, you hear what I'm saying, and just being able to like, at least I'll share my art with you if you're interested afterwards, and just sort of giving you more of a sense, because I'm more in my own style of mandala that's very different than what a lot of people are doing, because I don't like, I'm just not interested in really taking in. I'm always curious, and I think anyway I keep it simple, but at least for me I find a lot of access to that specific place through that type of work. And I was even I was gonna make like a sort of like a chimera of like a coyote with boar qualities, and it was a whole thing, and I was like, and I was really looking forward to getting into it, and I knew that it was going to be in this type of like real precise. But as soon as I started getting into it, I was just like, this is not the time for this. I don't want to do this actually. I could. I wouldn't like it. I'm going to do this instead.
Right.
Anyway. But you'd probably have to be getting a little bit more abstract, possibly, if you're wanting to get into that direction. And that might challenge your appearance as a governmental official if you start to get into the abstract.
Why do you say that?
I think that there's connotations. Maybe not. I think that would be really badass. I think that would be really interesting. I'd love to see how you would approach personally, especially with like such a you're so clean with landscape and obviously animals and you know you're really blending a lot of like realism with geometry, and I can see some of the abstract, and I feel like I can even I can really see it through this. I think it's really incredible. But like, have you ever really focused on making a full piece from start to end without any?
Just an abstract piece?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Wow. You're ready?
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
How does that sit with you?
It's the conversation that's happening with this exploration of like coming to the it, where I'd like to not have, here's a bird on an abstract background, here's a landscape, but how do I abstract a landscape that has the bird presence represented? Now, some of that may be still more representational, but maybe not. That's the spectrum I haven't quite landed on yet. Like, what part's abstracted and how much it's abstracted.
Yeah, it gets more into that subliminal space of like, again, the transference of the feeling as opposed to like the sort of like seeing it through the eyes is different than seeing it through the eyes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it kind of gets into that space of like sort of what you were speaking of before with like the strange glorification of abstractness, where I don't want to get, you hear what I'm saying? Maybe it's a little touchy. That's a little contested territory. I feel like it's hard for a lot of artists to be able to really distinguish themselves in those capacities, because like it often is from like a really unbridled sort of chaotic mind. But I do think it's very interesting when a person that is very composed and structured starts to like enter into that territory. Right. So I'm trying to cheerlead.
Yeah. It's good. And
because that would be very exposing, I think, probably.
Yeah. And it's, like I said, how you do one thing is how you do all things, and I've really enjoyed comparing, what is the dance experience and what is the art experience, and how are they the same for me, and in what ways, and how are they different, are they different?
Yeah, and like, is there that part of you that's even like really deeply connected with what would otherwise be seen as like Arabian style, and like more of that yeah, I just would be really we'll see where that goes. Maybe there'll be a follow-up interview after you explore that at some point. But yeah, even in that, like what would be the geometry or the shapes or the different sort of like fluid concepts that would just be like coming from you. And like, again, like I think when a person begins to tap into that well, that it, like sort of our own like our own intrinsic tradition in different ways begins to sort of, because we live in a really brilliant time where, like, everything can kind of be associated with anything at some cultural point. Anyway.
Yeah. The cocktail is interesting.
Yes.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite moments in this studio was during open house day, and I had some very traditional Middle Eastern music playing because I love it, and I decided that's what I'm going to play. And a woman came in, and she didn't really talk to me. She wasn't really engaging, just kind of like let her look and do her thing. And she eventually was like, I have to go get my, I think it was her aunt. I have to go get my aunt. I have to bring her in here. She was having an emotional experience because I was playing music that her grandfather had played. And I had a painting of a cardinal, which many people associated with, like, visitation from loved ones, right? Or a message from someone that's passed. And so she was like, all those things were coming together for her in one moment. And it was the most amazing thing. But she was like, I gotta go get my family member to come in here and experience this, right?
Was it this cardinal? Or was
No,
you had a
no,
different
no,
one?
it was a different one. Yeah.
Did they take it home with them?
Did they? No, she bought something. I don't remember what it was, but yeah.
That's sweet. So did that lead to sort of a more open conversation, or was it just like a nice, light, soft, pleasant exchange?
I mean, it was emotional for her, right? It was very nostalgic, and I think because it was unexpected, it happened in an unexpected place and time.
So all the pieces were just rightly organized.
Yeah.
Very sweet. So is that sort of like what you say? Is that something that you are seeking to create with your art and the experience of your space here?
I would really love people to walk in here and feel like their nervous system relaxes, right? Just a little bit of an exhale or inhale if needed.
Yeah, I mean, the first time that we even met, it was a bit of a mess out there with a bunch of, we were being a little bit rambunctious out there and just with those guys, and it just came in here and it was, very much, very obvious and very different. Just a very different demeanor within this space for sure, and it's
let's chill.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'll bring it back to this question. I don't know if we answered it.
Okay.
What inspires you to be an artist, and how would you define your relationship with this source of inspiration?
I mean, why do kids draw? What inspires them to pick up a crayon? How would they answer that question? Because I feel like that's the same answer. My adult brain can't come up with it, right?
I'll try your best.
Yeah, try my best.
I'm pushing you. I'm pushing you in that direction. This is the juice. This is the juice to squeeze from the fruit type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, everybody, I think, this is my opinion. I don't know if it's even controversial. It's probably not. I think everybody's creative, are meant to be creative. So just the question really is just, what are you creating? I choose paint, dance, photography. I've chosen a lot of things. Does that make me an artist, or does it make me a creative?
I feel like you're even especially because you're able to like maintain a career, and that like you see even like the silver lining within that, and especially like working for the government, and like that, yeah, there's a lot of things that even in our times of like everything is sort of inverted and backwards, that like in some capacity, like what you represent to different degrees is like a lost like, or it has never even been really a part of the conversation within art, of like how do people like show up in these responsibilities and do these things, and like maintain like a semblance of like order in these bigger places, and also like find the time for their own self-regulation and prioritize that and keep things simple to the best of their abilities, and and it's very because for me, I have like I have a real like ride or die like force behind my process, and I think it's softened a lot, it's been polished, but it's something that's hard for me for myself to see any other way, for me to be moving through life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But a lot of it is being able to have connections and conversations with people that are on, again, it's not even about it being like that you're on the polar end of something opposite, but you're just from a different angle of approach, looking in at maybe a similar outcome, or something that's like an aspiration to some degree, and even if it's just for the sake of like finding enjoyment and really being able to be clean about that and being honest about that, even that is like for me, I feel like that's even like a cohesive point of collaboration itself. I know that was a lot of words, but like in essence, like the ability to just be exploring again. For instance, like we're just sitting here for the first time, but like there's a joyful like rapport, and so like little bubbly. It's just a good space for us to be getting to know each other, and like there's the openness and the curiosity for that, without having some overarching ideal of what's the agenda
Right.
behind it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the driving force thing. I've thought about this, like, okay, well, what if I was traveling the world, whatever. Painting requires stuff, right? and space. So maybe that's not always possible. But what's always possible is I can take pictures. I will take pictures. And it doesn't have to be grand vistas, right? It could just be, wow, that shadow on that leaf is amazing.
So you're pretty open for even because of course, like there was a point in your life where you weren't so involved with painting until you were involved with painting,
Right.
and maybe even with dance, and of course with photography. And is that sort of how you're looking at things moving forward, of like even the idea of new things being introduced that you haven't yet crossed, and that maybe that will sweep you away into a new sort of inspired journey?
Yeah, I'm trying to be open to that journey versus setting goals and being goal oriented, right? Because again, I went to school, I graduated, I did the thing, I got the job. So I have that ability, right? I set my sights on something, we're going to reach this goal, and I got to do this work to get there.
But there was never a part of you that was wanting to question Or yeah, like how did that feel for you?
I think stability has been such a craving and a need that, for example, when it came time to go to college, I was done with high school. I was taking college classes before I was done with high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it never even occurred to me to like leave the state. Right? People go off to school. Never occurred to me. Maybe because I was the one responsible for making it happen, but I never really questioned that this is going to be the next step. I knew what I wanted to study. I started out as a commercial art major, actually, and then I took an environmental science class, and I went, oh my god, I gotta do this. And what am I doing? Art? I'm never gonna be able to do anything with that. I'm going to environmental science. Yeah.
So where did that take you?
That took me to actually my first state job, because I worked in the environmental section of the headquarters for the Air and Army National Guard, because they have training land, and that training land has to be cared for, and so that's where I started.
So they were doing a military training on these different environments, and you had to be the sort of the devil's advocate for the land. That was the department's job. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So, yeah, even that is just. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's never been a point in your life where you've really had to question your involvement with these different, even the military or
I mean, even dance that has taken up, years and years and years. And I say taken up like it's sucked at my life. It hasn't. It's been a choice, and it's been an amazing choice. Mm-hmm. But that even has been goal-oriented, because I've been through a very rigorous certification program, right? With multiple levels and multiple achievements in those levels. And so the conundrum of, am I ready to let this art form go? Am I really going to step away from this dance? It's huge decision to stay or not, or how I was going to show up, even if it didn't look any different to anybody else, but just felt different to me.
Do you feel like that's where you're at currently?
No, dance? I think I'm much more settled in my relationship with dance right now. Art, I'm sure I'll go through that at some point,
Gotcha. Yeah, it's I'll be honest with you, it's really surprising. I wouldn't have taken you for a belly dancer, but that's really curious of your style, and I think it speaks more to maybe more of the mystique of who you are, and what you're even presenting, or what you're even sharing of your experience, versus what's so like safeguarded, or just
the brand versus the reality.
Oh boy. No. I know. Yeah, it sounded like you did have some scorpionic strong points, so I would say that's part of the that's part of the curiosity of all of those things. Anyway, did you define your relationship with the source of inspiration yet?
Gosh darn.
You don't have to either. I feel like we kind of danced around that whole thing. You're really wanting to sort of be in the gliding, and like more of that just innocent, curious state of like how it's taking form currently, and just as much as the acorn is the oak tree, and its development of self, and it's never done in its cultivation of its design.
It's never done, but let me say this, and maybe this is ego speaking, I don't know.
We'll find out.
I really do I would like to experience what it's like to have produced a body of work, a cohesive body of work that I like look at every piece and go, yes, 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 yes. That either came out surprising, better than I intended, or different than I intended, and like really feel proud of every piece, and like have a solo show with something like that.
I would say, from an outsider looking in, from the walk that I've walked, I would say that the wild part of you, I think, is like wanting to come up and be presented. And I feel like that type of thing regarding like, you know, getting, and again, like, what do I know? I can't say I've ever really put on an art show. I've been asked to just put my art up and hang out in spots, and
Right.
that's been fun.
Yeah.
But especially, I don't know. I'm not trying to lecture you from the interviewer's seat here. But I just would be really, especially with like, again, like I feel like there's that undercurrent theme in what our connection and our conversation is about, just like you know, like, dare I say, like the primordial qualities of who you are, and sort of like those like what are otherwise like primitive qualities, or like pagan elements, you know. And like what, you know, like what does that mean as represented through your expression and through your, or is that even like an interest at all?
Okay, let me try and connect the dots.
That wasn't too charged. That wasn't too dense of a claim there. I'm being sarcastic. It was pretty. I can just take your time, or we can just move on.
Well, so you're reacting to me saying I would like to experience basically a cohesive body of work on display, right? And then, so what you're saying is, what is it about me that wants to be on display?
No, well, it's more like, I guess what I'm challenging or calling attention to is just like in the vein of the conversation we were having earlier of like, you know, unfortunately, the art world has become very overly saturated and diluted in a lot of ways, and a lot of the people that are maybe outside of the art world, or they're coming into it and they maybe don't have more of that defined or refined eye, like don't maybe aren't approaching landscape through the lens of like you as an individual artist, but rather like they just see, oh, landscape, I've seen this style before. Oh, there's a raven on a cactus, you know, there's an owl in the forest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, would that be, is that maybe what I'm challenging you right now in is this a safe approach for you and your creative expression, or what does it feel like for you to sort of get into, like, you know, bringing the belly dancer into like the art space and like wanting to be in that style, and like have a mess anyway. This is just what's coming up. It's just a curious thought of like, what would that look like for you to feel really emboldened and having a space and wanting to like stand in your sort of your power, without making this woo woo and maybe pretentious.
No, so here's what I'll relate it to.
Okay.
And I think I have an advantage that dance gives me, because I've physically been vulnerable on stage in front of an audience of people at the same time, you know, at once. And it's not looking at a piece of canvas I put paint on. Oh, you know what I mean? Like that is, it's not me, but if I'm on stage, it's me. It's physically me. And being vulnerable on stage and really being like, you know what, I am proud of this choreography, this piece, and what it means to me, and like the emotion I'm bringing to it and the authenticity I'm bringing to it. This is me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to do that. I want to do that with the art, right? I can look at it and go, yeah, I was there, and I know what this means to me, and I love these colors, and I think the composition is good. Is it me? Is it vulnerably me?
Mm.
I don't think I'm there yet.
And is that even what you're seeking?
I think the me part and the uniqueness part and the that zing when you know it's it. Yeah, I'm seeking that.
Mm.
I love this piece. I love, like I said, I fall in love with all of them at some point.
Your space really does feel, especially with these, it feels like there's so much more space in here. I feel like that's definitely being translated, and it again, based off of, again, just the feeling of it, it's just like obviously allows for, more of a slow arrival, like everything is, it seems like that's probably also like your temperament,
Right.
in your work. What kind of music do you typically listen to when you're making art?
Arabic.
Nice. Do you have any blood from the Middle East?
No.
Interesting. You Irish?
Yes.
All Irish?
No.
So I don't want to pry.
Not
but
100%.
yeah.
No.
I'll save that whole interesting tie between like the Celtic blood and also the like the Bedouin blood, and like again, like there's such a different story in history about like nomadic people, and like what were different cultural ties, and like how they came to cross and how they came to be, and I can't help but wonder if like underneath of it all, if there's again like maybe not, we'll never get to the answer of that.
Never get that answer. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't help but wonder if that's just a curious phenomenon.
I've often wondered what is it about Middle Eastern music that like I don't know, but no other music gives me that feeling.
Yeah, the oud, anyway, OUD, that instrument, I forget what its name is, but yeah, I feel like it's again that whole like it's more. Okay, well, with all this said, then, how do you view the concept of community? This is like a 5-part question, so I'll just pace it one at a time. How do you view the concept of community?
Is humanity a concept?
Community.
Oh, sorry. You said community. Why did I hear humanity?
Well, yeah. Well, maybe I'm mumbling a little bit. How do you view the concept of community?
What is community to me? If I could, is that the fair way of?
Sure. Yeah. How do you view it? What is community to you?
It's not super complicated, I don't think. It's, for example, the dance community I'm in. I feel like I am part of a community because we have shared interests, shared experiences, and well, some people in the community I may not be considered like, we're not friends, we're not close friends, we're still part of the same community. And if I needed something, I think the community would rally.
If you needed something out of a state of desperation?
Not even necessarily out of a state of desperation.
So like instead of like framing it in the way of the need, but like more in like if you had a dream and that you were really trying to get there,
Yeah.
do you feel like they would also be supportive of that?
Yes.
That's pretty amazing to have that. So you feel pretty tight with these women.
It's layers of a community
Mm-hmm.
of people that I'm close with, and then people that are in the community in a broader sense. Again, that we share similar. We have a shared interest. We have shared space together.
It's very foreign to me, but it sounds very
Yeah.
interesting, and it sounds like something that I'd love to be able to, yeah, really explore and kind of get a feel for, and
And it takes time, it takes so much time, because unless you are physically interacting on a very frequent basis, and you have people's contact information and you're communicating,
mm-hmm.
then let's take this place for example. This is an art community. Do I feel like I'm part of a community? No.
Right. Yeah, it's like there's community and then there's community,
Right.
I feel like that's again like in the whole thing of like how so many words have like really lost their substance, and like everything has become so diluted that now it's like it's a functional component of capitalism versus like the reality and like the humanity of community, because it's a really strange phenomenon, that I'm being playful in saying this, but it's like it seems as if a lot of the artists are actually like the least creative people, and I'm saying that again very maybe a little bit of arrogance, because obviously that's the case, but I do believe that like that quality of innovation and that quality of really like considering like like what would like sweeping reform actually look like, you know what I mean, and like what are those practical steps, and like how much do people really understand like the infrastructure, you know what I mean, and like the things that are easily taken for granted, you know what I mean, and then simultaneously like we should probably be consolidating a lot of these processes and probably really making things more efficient. So again, like think people maybe are like accessing more quality of time, and they're like, because of how hyper efficient our society is, like people should be able to have more time, and it seems like that's not the case.
It's the opposite, right?
And like it almost seems like it's again like how for example like how catalytic and transformational that would be for like people to be like immediately exploring like living together, and like it can become a very overwhelming and like anxiety riddled and confusing space if there isn't like a vision for where it's going, and to be able to like focus on something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus like, okay, let's all get to know each other first. It's like, let's get to know each other while we're doing this, actually. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the trust thing, definitely.
Hence why I think the dance community does feel more like a community, because there are goals associated with it. It's not just let's get together and hang out, right? Like there's goals. You're working on your dance, I'm working on my dance. We're gonna work on a dance together. We're gonna produce an event together. There's things we're creating together.
And simultaneously, are there more layers that maybe have the ability to grow into, where there's more of like an interest in like shared responsibility, or maybe gradually or like gradually shifting into different approaches to lifestyle where there's a different relationship with time, and there's maybe even more of a I guess the point that I'm really trying to get to is like, there's that, I'm sure for you that you have your like professional friends that are in this one realm of your life, and then you have your your more personal friends that are in this realm of your life, but they're not really having overlap.
Correct.
And I believe that one of the critical thresholds of crossover is when we blend the professionalism, like these pragmatic, and like, maybe even deadline, or like really holding people accountable, and like really getting to know how a person is really showing up in those ways as friends, and kind of getting the blood into the game a little bit, and like, what does it really look like, and what does it really feel like to be able to like really lean and put weight on another person without, again, like there's so much talk around like, that's codependency, or that's toxic, or that's, but like, it's like if we're not able then to really put like the weight and lean, and like not from like desperate places where like we're just so we're so unsettled with our emotions that like we're just expecting that our friends are going to be there for us because like they're there for us. But like like in those ways of like really for example, like in the ideal of ideals within a communal setting of like really being able to have like gardens and being able to grow and sustain ourselves with our food, and keeping animals, and a lot of moving parts, to be able to like maintain like a culture that's healthy. And like that's kind of what I'm curious about within like people's own minds, and how they perceive community, or how they perceive even their own friendships and their own relationships, and like where are those hard lines drawn, or maybe is that maybe like how can we maybe like blur the lines or blend them, and or is that even a thought that you're even like entertaining?
Well, and this is gonna sound kind of rude, and I don't mean it this way, but like, why would I entertain those thoughts? And I say that because what I sense is that like you're analyzing may not be the right word, but like observing and experiencing, like, okay, like the world is this way, but what if it could be this way? And like testing people's perception of both of those worlds existing and potential, to maybe see like how can we get over here? Am I understanding?
I would say again, it's I would say that you're in, especially with the way that you're framing it, I would say that you're pretty close to being like right on the nail.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly a lot of what I believe is part of my art is wanting to introduce a new way of communicating, and like a new way of considering where we might be better directed, but of course like the whole thing is geared towards like a collaborative effort where like everybody is really like deciding for themselves how much they want to be. And of course like you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and like all these different institutions are actually made of people, and they're held up by people, but people have kind of got lost in the sauce, so to say, with all the programming and all the conditioning, and it's been so like inbred and kind of backwater that like, and like again, like that's not the case for everywhere. And like I didn't grow up in Austin, I grew up in Philadelphia, and a very different cultural experience, and like saw some like just radioactive qualities of humanity that like they might not even be present at all within your probably not, maybe not, you know, so like that's part of where I'm coming from. It's just like, and like of course like for myself, you know, I don't live in any of those ways, but I can't forget about them either, and I also don't like carry them as a burden. But it's like when there's a point of access within life where there's like obviously like, you know, like a rising into a new way that's superior, you know, that it isn't forgotten that this is definitely a systemic issue where people are kept from maybe finding access to those perspectives because of yada yada yada.
Yeah. So let me give you an analogy, because in a small way, and I mean a very small way, I may be able to relate to what you're saying. Because I mean, what you're talking about is big, right? It's like humanity, and it's like culture, and it's society, and it's very big concepts.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take it down to a very small and boring example of
not too boring.
Software development.
Oh boy, that is boring.
But here's what
I'm kidding. I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So.
But here's what I experienced. And this is kind of the analogy that's come to mind. There's frameworks for developing software, and one of those is very old school, and it goes something like this. Okay, you need a new widget application. Tell me, what is it you want it to do? Oh, you want it to do X and B and thing and stuff. Okay, what's required? What's mandatory? What's nice to have stuff? Okay, we got all your requirements. Great. Now we're gonna go build it. We build it. Okay, now we built it. Now let's test it. Okay, test. And then at the end, we come back and we say, here's the thing. You told us exactly what you wanted, and we built it, right? They call that waterfall. But what happens is, did I translate? Did I really hear what you wanted? Did you even really know what you wanted, right? Until you see it, and then you're like, no, that's not it, actually. I changed my mind. Or you misinterpreted what I meant, right? There's a lot of risk and wasted effort that happens if I wait till the end to give you the thing. So there was this, it's not new, right? But there was like kind of this revolution of, they call it agile, right? Agile development, where instead of this big bang waterfall version, we're gonna start with, like, even the way we have the conversation to begin with is different, right? So let's talk about your experience. Like, don't tell me the thing on the top needs to be blue, but like, what are you trying to achieve? And like, what's the hat that you're wearing while you're doing that? So, you know, as a, you know, restaurant goer, I really, you know, am aiming to get this burrito or whatever. Like, what's the outcome? And then we look at all of those outcomes that this product needs to achieve, and then they get prioritized. Like, what's the highest value thing that we should work on? Has the most impact and the least amount of effort. Least amount of resources, highest impact. Put our time on that. And we do those things, and then we come back and we say, here's a version of what we think has value. Is that right or is that wrong? Now let's iterate on that. Right? So it becomes this value gets produced faster process, the framework, but the team that works on the product is collaborating. It's not the handoff between assembly line.
Right, like whisper down the lane type of things, and how things can fall between the cracks.
It's a team that is, and there's an official term called self-organizing. Right? People have roles, but on that team, the team is responsible for deciding what they're going to commit to, how much work they're committing to, and what they're going to produce at the end of whatever the time frame is, right? So there's a goal, a shared understanding and agreement with the whole team of what they're going to produce. So when I hear about like the paradigm of, you know, old world, new world, American, you know, institutional society, communal society, those that's the framework that comes to mind for me as an analogy of like going from ABC to, can we like get together and talk about this in a different way and actually produce something that's more valuable faster.
Yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell definitely how I feel towards this conversation. And of course, like, you know, they're very, you know, titanic structures that, again, like it's impossible to be able to, and I feel like this is a lot of the struggle that I find, because like, you know, people are so fixated on, you know, these large perspectives, and like then like being in, like, again, like they're so gigantic, and like as soon as like, and people, again, like oftentimes what I believe is like people that are often like fixated in that perspective are so lost in seeing, like, again, like if you even move one of these colossal things by like 1 degree, then it's like, you know, it's tearing up all of these different things poetically. You know what I mean? And you know, like, again, it's like, first off, like we definitely have to be able to like arrive to, like, we're not doing this to defend off the apocalypse, and it's just like, again, like life is good, and you know, like, you know, that sort of like, hooray, you did it, you have arrived to a sense of like quality and maybe a sense of fulfillment, but you know that life is continuing to move forward. And you know, like where does like an incubator as a concept, you know, how does that begin to maybe like shape a different type of dialogue, and maybe hold a different type of model, and maybe begin to prototype like a different, just like social infrastructure that is more of like, again, like being aware of all these different mechanics, but like it's in more of a fluid, and it's more of like, again, like it's so like releasing of the nervous system, and it's just about transparency, and again, like we're coming up, in my opinion, at like, you know, really the critical tail end of, you know, the Industrial Revolution. And it's like, again, like surprise, no surprise, like we've in a strange way industrialized ourselves, and like we've kind of mechanized ourselves in different capacities. And like how does that like cybergenetic return to our own like animalistic nature, you know, and like how do we like really be able to get out of productivity as an indicator of success, but you know, like what does it really feel like, or what does it really look like when like all of those qualities of base needs are met, and there isn't like this hunger that is being unfulfilled within expectations. You know, and so like it's like, you know, like to be able to like really be living in that sort of that state that we arrive to when we're working on our own art, and like really being able to live in that, and like not feeling like we need to compromise on that, but we know that that's like a genuine quality of our own experience. That's what I gotta say.
So how is your art making that world come to fruition?
Me? You know, it's always it's a dance and a wrestling match in a lot of different ways, and you know, I feel like a lot of what my art plays with like really the requirement of us to come into a different relationship with tension, you know, and be able to like approach confrontation from a more like regulated nervous system space, And like again, like conflict isn't the measure of the health of a relationship, but rather the way that the conflict is handled, you know. And like we should be celebrating when any tension points are coming up, and like being able to hold the space of like, hey, this I trust you, and I know that you're not moving with malicious intent. But like this is making, there's some strange quality that feels like my survival is being threatened.
Yeah.
And then the rationalization, the justification, and a lot of people, in my opinion, don't really press against that within relationship, and that they don't really know that territory, and like they're like maybe the rapport has been maintained, that it's very cordial and it's very light, and so like because there's such a contrast in expression that like this is, you know, this has been the harmonic, you know, the developed dance of this particular quality relationship. Like this is definitely an obvious part of our own human nature.
Yeah.
And like if there isn't the ability to incorporate all of these aspects and still be able to like feel respected and held, and you know, and also like having good humor and being able to kind of like roll with it, and like again there's so many other conversations, again like just, you know, being able to come into like communion with the cycles of the moon, and like sometimes like how hard it is. I'm sure you can relate to different degrees, but I know for myself of like that momentum behind like impulse that at one point was so inspired, but then it becomes so like all consuming, you know. I don't know how that is for you, because like again like I subscribe to a very different like schedule within my days, and I don't have a job, so like if I need to spin, I'll spin it for myself,
right,
you know.
Yeah, and my experience is kind of opposite, where I'm trying not to let things override, you know, the natural flow of things, you know, where I go outside and I look up at the sky, and like I have to think, okay, where am I, what season am I in, where is the moon, and like I have to constantly reconnect.
Whereas I really, you know, I'm sort of my own guinea pig of like, you know, I believe that there's a real correlation between like a wizard and a clown, and like there's that quality of madness that is even, again, like even within like, you know, like Sufi as an example, but of course many different traditions where like, you know, even in the indigenous ways of like why the coyote was held as like such a high like sacred symbol, and like what the coyote represents, and it's just a really beautiful story that like all of these different traditions, like, you know, again there's always like the, you know, the deified and like the exalted, and like that's true, and like obviously that's where like all attention is sort of focused, but then when you really get to get into those stories, that these like really mischievous chaos qualities are really like the sort of like they're so small and seemingly insignificant, but they make everything move. You know? And it's always from that really beautiful, playful, like wise stupidity of like, you know, like being on that edge, you know, and like knowing that like mistake, if you're really on that leading edge of any thought, that like mistakes are intrinsic, you know.
Of course, yeah.
And like I feel like that's a big space where people have opportunity to maybe learn new ways of self-forgiveness. So how important is community to you in relation to your creative expression?
I think it's important. It's an important grounding element. You know, I had to think of the opposite again, which is if I was creating alone, always alone, I could do that. I could do that. But
Could you?
for a while. But I have the studio because I wanted a connection with other people. I want to talk to other people about what they're creating. I want to see other people's work. I have a good friend, and we do art things together. So it's part of the magic of it. Sure.
So you give a lot of space for how you found some really good solid connections. You feel really nourished in those ways. You're not seeking for more, but you're open to things that might be presented.
Always.
For as long as, again, there's conversation and healthy dialogue, because how oftentimes that the impulse leads to disasters if it's not really well thought out,
Yes.
And I feel like that's probably underlying like why artists aren't really leading the show on that scale. Would you say that community kind of drives your future vision?
I wouldn't have ever thought about this question. It's a very interesting question. And I'm going to say yes because I don't, my future vision, what is my future vision? I don't know. I have ideas. I have things I like to do, and I have things I want to offer the world. I'm working on something right now that is not a painting. It's not canvas related. It's movement related, but it's very much creatively focused, and I think it'll only really work if there's a community element, or there's a way for not even bringing the word community, right? Because we know already, we've acknowledged that definition is kind of all over the place. But human connection, let me just call it that. There's some human connection that is part of the creative process. And I don't want to reveal what that is yet.
Oh.
But I'm very excited about it. I feel like it's a culmination of years of all of the things.
I'm very curious. Very curious. Very curious indeed. This is actually the next question. Do you hold a future vision in relation to your art? See, it's on the paper, so you gotta answer it. But of course, if you want to keep it secretive, it's still in sort of in vitro and sort of in its own cultivative.
I have lots of ideas. So here's another one. I've always thought it would be fun to combine 2D art with dance, and maybe even come up with a curated list of images or songs, like some initiation point. Let's just say it's a photograph. So if I gave an artist a photograph, and I gave a dancer a photograph, and I said, create something from this. Or if it was a piece of music, and I said, paint something to this, choreograph to this, and then we like brought these interpretations together, like what would happen? Or would the artist and the dancer create something that maybe it's not one thing, but like maybe it weaves in and out? And like, how could that be presented? I think that would be super fascinating to cross-pollinate, right?
Yeah, I don't have much exposure to like structured dance traditions. I love to dance, and it comes in my life every once in a while. But it's never been even an idea of, where does that, where does that tie in with also making art? and even in my own approach to art, of like, it's really hard for me personally to like sit down with other people drawing or doing other things. Like, I'm so like, whatever I'm doing is what I'm doing, and like, it's hard for me to be able to be talking with other people and then simultaneously is just like drawing something that like I personally, anyway.
I'm with you on that. I understand that. And I guess this particular concept, I'm not sure actually like how the creation process would play out, but then the final presentation of it would be, I don't know, imagine going into a small theater space and like the backdrop is the artist's work that they created, projected, or, you know, blown up somehow, and then the dancer and the music, like, it all combines.
What would be like your aim for that?
What would be my aim for that?
Like, what would you hope to be sort of like sort of touching within people?
So I produced a show years and years and years ago, and I called it The Color Project. Kind of a similar blending where we took a color and I chose a song and an emotional perspective and a choreography and costumes, and like brought that all together to say, here's blue. There's a million different ways to interpret blue, orange, eggplant, right? So what was I trying to do with that? I wanted people to go on a ride with that, and I wanted them to go, oh, wow, yeah, that really totally was eggplant. Never would have thought of it that way, you know?
That is such a different realm of contemplation and consideration. That is very, very far away, very foreign to me. There's some, I would obviously have some different contention points regarding, again, like, you know, call me old-fashioned, maybe I'm a little pragmatic as a man, but is that a distraction?
How so?
Well,
distraction from?
Well, my friend, I'll share this with you. We live in wild times. There's a lot of things happening. I think we're coming to recognize the Western propaganda bubble is beginning to break by means of its own acidic and hyper-pressurized nature. And as that propaganda bubble is beginning to dissociate or dissolve, or any of those words, that we're beginning as a people to have more of a sense of what's going on internationally, including how other leaders are interfacing with each other. And that there's a larger dialogue that I believe is being presented at this time. And for a very long time, in my opinion, art and theater and show has been used in the same way as like the Colosseums in ancient, and again, we could even go on and on about just like different qualities of gate. Anyway, I'll keep that simple for now, just to keep this thread going. Without, in my opinion, without like a really thriving and balanced society and culture where art is more of a like a spontaneous generative expression that's coming by means of like a cohesiveness, or like just, again, like a balanced way. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, but, and like, again, like those really curious, like how different, for example, like how different that is for people that, like they respect their land, like the landlord, and like there's equity within their own lives, and like they don't feel under the gun within their jobs, and they don't feel like, you know, they have to be fixated on the stability of their 401k for the security of their future existence, and like, you know, all of these different things that like, yeah, and like again, like, you know, just like so many talking points of just like, we've, strangely enough, like we're continuing to put creative energy towards the idea of art as it's structured within a society that has lost its way, in my opinion. And again, like, we're living on, you know, if there's a line, you know, that's between the two of us, so we definitely are. And again, we're finding commonality. This is a very pleasant conversation with you, but we live on separate sides of this line. You know what I mean?
The only line I really see is how much you, like, what am I responsible for here? Like, you know, if I have an idea for a show based on a concept, like, I don't feel responsible for having a fixed society in order to make it valid. And for me, it's enough that people would have an emotional experience. That's the point.
Yeah, and I'm definitely like valuing this conversation and even this point right now, and I do, like, even just having this conversation with you, and just again, like, you know, from your walk and what you've shared, and again, like, that you're working for, you know, you're in a position of the government, you know what I mean, and like that, just being able to you know, touch base on commonality. And of course, like, it's for me, I'd be very curious to like see what your show, for example, would be about, of like what would be the substance be underneath of blue and underneath of eggplant as examples. Yeah. And like, simultaneously, like, all meaning can also be like extrapolated from that, you know, like that there's always conversation. And of course, like, yes, there's no doubt in my mind that the only way forward is for like emotional intelligence to be recognized as a thing. Mm-hmm. And like, we're never gonna, there's no way of being able, and of course, like, it's like, okay, well, also, we're not fending off the apocalypse, that the world isn't coming to end, like, things are definitely needing to shatter, and that's going to be hard for a lot of people based off of how delusional they've been according to their adherence to a certain structure. But at the same time, like, if people are able to, you know, like, just find those deeper spaces within themselves of these different types of just contemplations, and maybe they are just distractions, and maybe they are meaningless for some, but obviously being able to be lost in those moments, I think, is also a really beautiful experience, and something that's obviously like nurturing. I wanted to dance as PC as possible around that, to really be able to find balance with you.
You don't have to be. Cool. You don't. Mm-mm.
Right on.
No. I'm just not. I'm not a social commentary artist, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not. It's not where my heart lives.
And it makes a lot of sense, because like, it would be a forced expression of like, what do they call that? Virtue signaling. Uh-huh. If you, yeah, because you don't come from that place, and I'm even in different conversations I'm having with like street artists and graffiti artists, you know, that they have, you know, like, we're able to have all the pleasant conversations in the world about all the ideals and all the things, but like, as soon as it comes to that point of conversation of like making solutions and being able to like prioritize quality of life, and being able to kind of get away from the animosity and sort of like the like the agitation quality, that then there's it gets mirrored in that same way. And like I wasn't trying to hold a mirror for you at all, because like I know how annoying that is, even as like a glorified homeless man in my navigation of like, there's a lot of reasons why it would seem as if I'm at the front lines of these in my opinion like artificial wars, social wars. And like anyway, not to go on my own monologue, but I do, yeah, it's really refreshing to have the conversation with you about these things. And obviously, yes, like these aren't things that you have to really sit with or consider, because you haven't been wronged by them, or
Right.
you don't even see them really as much. Like you're not even really having that quality of society reflected in your experience.
Yeah, my challenges may be totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I could go on a tangent about other things, but I can only control myself, and I can only deal with the situations that I'm faced with, and that I see. Like, there's trash on the side of the road, and we pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. Right? There's a lot of good causes I would like to see move forward, but it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of peace comes from, again, just slowly moving in those directions, and really being mindful of momentum, and really being again, because it's one thing to be able to be like, we're all on this side, so we're gonna have to over adjust and all be on this side, and like then it keeps on, but and it's just like it's like, where's the fulcrum at, and like what does that actually feel like, and like where are there people at within like that idea, and like and again, like that's where I find a lot of joy, is really being able to like press against point and like see like what's kind of wanting to open, and like what gives away, or like even like where there's that sort of like healthy tension, or there's like there's something that's being pressed against, or like where it's just like so unrelatable, and it's so outside, and it's so disconnected from like what you're experiencing, and it just would be so absurd for me to try to like lecture or like fill you in on like, and at the end of the day, like for me, like I love having all the interactions that I have with all like the like disheveled and like sometimes disembodied homeless people. Like I love that,
Mm-hmm.
and like not everybody needs to do that. Not everybody's equipped to do that, but like it gives just a different texture and a different quality of like human experiences, and it gives more of like by contrast of like really being able to again sit in your studio with you and have these conversations, and see from these different angles and these different perspectives. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway,
Did I answer the question?
you did. You did very well. That's the end of those questions. Anything else that's coming up that you really want to really like let the world know? This is going to be...
This is way more than the world probably needs to know already.
Oh boy. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it doesn't challenge your authoritarian rule.
I don't have an authoritarian role. I really don't. And I think
I'm
it's very
teasing you.
interesting. How many government employees have you talked to outside of a transactional situation?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Off the top of my head, you're the only one. Yeah.
Hopefully I'm like blowing the mold. Like,
I would say, I feel like I feel like you're a good representative of the government if you represent the government at all in those ways.
Okay.
But at least for Austin, Texas, I'd say. Okay. For whatever it's worth, she has my approval as a government representative, as a civil servant.
Yeah.
That's finding her time with making some really beautiful art. Do you have any like social media or any websites people can find you on?
Yes, I do. www. We don't say that anymore. StaceyLizette.com. No, that's my dance website. StaceyLizetteArt.com.
And we can find you dancing at StaceyLizette.com.
Yeah. So.
Any Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, at StaceyLiz_art.
I'll have to find you and follow you. And yeah, I'll have all your things where, I'll figure it out and post it. But yeah, Stacey, it was a pleasure. Thanks for finding the time.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and hopefully the conversation continues.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it up now, and I'll keep on poking and picking at your brain. But hey, thanks everybody for joining, and